I was playing a new mobile game called Primitive Tribes when I picked the Beast-Ear Girl tribe as my faction. The next second, everything went black and I woke up in a cave on a pile of dry grass, with some berries in the corner. It looked like some kind of primitive world. A system voice rang in my head, telling me I'd been transported into the game world. It activated something called the Strongest Tribe system to help me out. I got a starter gift pack with 2 items. A basic survival guide that instantly taught me skills like making fire, setting traps, and building shelters, and a strength pill that would toughen up my weak body. Then the system gave me my first quest, become the chief of the Beast-Ear Girl tribe. The quest description mentioned I was the only male in the entire tribe, which got me pretty excited. The system said the task wasn't too hard as long as I used my starter items well. I used the survival guide first. All kinds of useful wilderness knowledge flooded into my brain. Then I swallowed the strength pill and immediately felt way stronger than my old office worker body ever was. Just as I was getting settled, I heard a soft voice behind me. I turned around and saw a fox-eared girl walking toward me, wearing a grass skirt and a piece of animal hide covering her chest. Her name was Bai Shui. The fox-eared girl standing in front of me was adorable. Small body, pure eyes, snow-white hair, pink lips, fluffy ears on top, and a long white tail. Her name was Bai Shui. She offered me a bowl of water, but it was murky and smelled weird, so I turned it down. She asked again if I really didn't want it, then drank it herself, even licking the bowl clean. That told me everything. The tribe was running out of water. When I asked, Bai Shui confirmed it. A wild beast had taken over their only water source, and what she just gave me was the last bowl. She also mentioned that whoever could take back the water source would be made the tribe's first chief. They never needed one before since the tribe was small and survived just by picking berries. But this crisis changed their minds. This was exactly the chance I needed to complete my system quest. My survival guide had taught me how to build hunting traps, so maybe I could deal with the beast. I told Bai Shui I might be able to help, and she got so excited she grabbed my hand and dragged me outside. On the grass outside the cave, about a dozen beast-eared girls were sitting together discussing the water problem. They were all different types. There were rabbit ears, cow horns, tiger ears, cat ears, each one beautiful in her own way. When Bai Shui announced I could help, most of them looked doubtful. A tiger-eared girl named Baihu laughed and said I was the guy they'd rescued from the forest yesterday, so how could I possibly fight a beast? But a cat-eared girl named Inu told Baihu not to look down on people. Inu was basically the tribe's leader even though they had no official chief. Everyone respected her. She asked me calmly if I could really take back the water source. I told her I probably could, but I needed to see the beast first before making any promises. Inu described the beast to me. Strong body, hard fur, thick legs like tree trunks, 2 huge sharp tusks, and it made grunting sounds. Their stones couldn't even scratch its hide, and it could knock down a whole tree. Based on her description, I figured it was a wild boar. I asked if its back had thick dark brown or black fur and a thin curly tail, and Inu confirmed it matched exactly. I explained to the girls what a wild boar was and warned them that boars usually travel in groups, so there might be more than one. That scared Bai Shui pretty bad, but Inu insisted they only saw one. I admitted it was possible there was just one, which would actually make things easier for us. That's when Baihu stepped up and called me a liar, saying I was just making stuff up and didn't actually know anything about the beast. Bai Shui and Inu both defended me, but Baihu wouldn't back down. So I made her a bet. I told her if I could kill the beast and take back the water source, not only would they make me chief, but she'd also have to sleep next to me every night to keep me warm. Inu confirmed the chief part. They'd already agreed anyone who solved the water crisis would become their first chief. When she asked what warming the bed meant, I just said it meant sleeping together. Baihu didn't see the problem with that since the tribe members already slept together anyway. She agreed to the deal without hesitating. With the bet settled, I asked Inu to tell me how big the boar was, so I could figure out the right plan to deal with it. Inu spread her arms to show me the boar's size, and I was shocked. It was at least 1.5 meters tall and over 2 meters long, way bigger than any boar from my world. A normal trap wouldn't work on something that big, so I decided to use a pit trap. Dig a deep hole, plant sharp spikes at the bottom, cover it with branches and grass, then lure the boar into it. I told everyone I had a plan and asked them to take me to the water source. Bai Shui volunteered to lead the way, grabbing my hand eagerly. On the way there, I noticed a bamboo grove and memorized its location. Bamboo would make much better spikes than regular sticks. When we arrived, we hid behind some bushes. Sure enough, a huge boar was lying near the water. But then I spotted something the girls had missed. Footprints all around the water, different sizes, but all from the same type of animal. There wasn't just one boar, there were two. Based on the size difference in the prints, I figured it was a male and a female, and the female was probably about to give birth, which explained why they'd settled near water. That meant I needed to build 2 traps instead of 1. More work, but also more meat, enough to feed the whole tribe for days. I picked a good spot for the traps, not too close to spook the boar and not too far to make luring it difficult. Then I asked the girls for digging tools. They didn't have any, just some wooden spears they used for hunting small animals like rabbits. Those wouldn't be efficient enough. I asked for knives instead, and Inu handed me a bone knife, polished from animal bones they'd found, and surprisingly sharp. With these, I could make proper digging tools myself. I found plenty of wood in the forest and used the bone knife to carve a simple wooden shovel, one end flat for digging, the other end thin for gripping. It looked rough, but it worked way better than their spears for moving dirt. When I showed it to the girls, they were amazed. They'd never seen anything like it. Even who'd been looking down on me, seemed a little impressed. I sent Inu and some of the others to the bamboo grove to cut bamboo while I made more shovels. The rest of the girls took turns digging with the first one. By the afternoon, we had 2 deep pits ready. When Inu's group came back with the bamboo, I sharpened the pieces into spikes and planted them at the bottom of each pit. Then I climbed out using vines the girls lowered down, and we covered both holes with branches and dry grass so they blended into the ground. Inu asked why we made 2 traps. I pointed out the different-sized footprints near the water. There were clearly 2 boars, not 1. That scared the girls, but I promised them both traps would work. Inu assured me again that if I pulled this off, everyone would accept me as chief. Baihu repeated her end of the bet too, saying she'd warm my bed every night if I caught both boars. Now I just had to lure the boar toward the traps by making it angry enough to chase me. Thanks to the strength pill I'd taken earlier, I was confident I could outrun it. As I headed toward the water source, Baihu followed me. She insisted on helping with the lure, bragging that she was the fastest runner in the tribe and had once chased down 2 rabbits on foot. When we got to the water source, Baihu spotted both boars drinking, one huge and muscular, the other with a big round belly. The pregnant female looked like she was about to give birth any day. Baihu admitted she was glad I'd thought to build 2 traps. We split the job. I'd lure the dangerous male, and she'd handle the slower pregnant female. I made some noise in the bushes to get the male's attention, then jumped out and threw a rock at it. That made it furious, and it charged straight at me. The thing was terrifyingly fast, smashing through bushes and snapping small trees, but thanks to the strength pill my body could keep ahead of it. I ran to the trap and stopped right behind it, then taunted the boar by throwing dirt clumps at it. It went berserk and charged full speed. The ground gave way under its weight, and it fell onto the bamboo spikes below. The more it struggled, the deeper they went in. Before long, it stopped moving. The girls rushed over and went wild with joy. They had their water back and meat to eat. Inu thanked me and was about to call me chief when I reminded everyone there was still a second boar. Right on cue, Baihu burst out of the trees with the mother boar chasing her. I told her to hide, then used the same trick, threw dirt at it until it charged me and fell into the second trap. Same result, dead on the spikes. The girls cheered again. Inu announced that by their agreement, I was now their chief. Bai Shued jumped up and down celebrating. I soaked in their admiration for a moment, then turned to Baihu with a grin and asked if she had anything to say about our little bet. Baihu pouted but accepted the bet. She'd warm my bed every night, just as promised. A deal's a deal. Right then, the system chimed in with my quest rewards, 2 flintstones and 300 reputation points. The flint was perfect for making fire, way more efficient than rubbing sticks together. The reputation turned out to be a system currency for a shop, but I needed 1,000 to unlock it, so that would have to wait. I announced to everyone that we'd be eating roasted wild boar tonight. They looked confused and a bit sad. They told me the tribe had no way to make fire. They could only find it after lightning storms, and normally ate everything raw. They'd only tasted cooked meat once before, a roasted rabbit, and still remembered how good it was. I told them not to worry, I could start a fire. They couldn't believe it. I had them gather dry grass and twigs, scraped some wood shavings with a bone knife, then pulled out the flint stones. Nobody had ever seen anything like them. I struck the 2 stones together, sending sparks onto the wood shavings until a thin trail of smoke appeared. After a few more strikes, I placed the smoldering shavings onto the dry grass and blew gently. A flame burst to life. The girls went crazy with excitement. Inyu said with me leading them, the tribe's future looked bright. Bai Shui beamed, saying she always knew I could do it. Even Bai Hu was stunned. She couldn't figure out how I knew so much, and secretly decided to ask me about it when she came to warm my bed later. We roasted the boar meat over the fire. Without any seasoning, it was a bit bland for my taste, but the girls devoured it like it was the best thing they'd ever eaten, grease running down their chins, every one of them grinning with pure happiness. After the feast, everyone was stuffed. Bai Shui asked if we could eat roasted meat like this every day, and I promised her we would, and even better food in the future. Then Inyu brought over a wooden bucket full of animal blood and offered it to me first. I was confused since we'd already gotten the water source back, but she explained that beast blood kept their bodies healthy. Without it, they'd grow weak. I figured out it was probably about the salt content in the blood. In a primitive world, salt is nearly impossible to find, and bodies need it. I couldn't bring myself to drink blood though, so I turned it down and started thinking about how to find actual salt later. Inyu then asked me what to do with the leftover boar meat before it went bad. They'd never had this problem before since meat was so rare for them. I told her to make jerky, slice it thin, and dry it in the sun or near fire. She picked it up quickly and took some girls to get started. The system rewarded me 100 reputation for teaching the tribe food preservation. That gave me an idea. I could earn reputation just by teaching the tribe new skills. To test this, I sat down next to Bai Shui, who was staring at the fire, fascinated. She admitted she was curious about how I'd created fire from nothing, so I offered to teach her. I reached out and petted her fluffy fox ears without thinking. She let out a gasp and practically collapsed, face turning bright red. Apparently, beast-eared girls' ears and tails are extremely sensitive. Touching them causes strong reactions. I apologized awkwardly and quickly changed the subject back to fire-making. I taught her how to use the flintstone step by step, and before long she managed to start a fire on her own. Sure enough, the system gave me another 100 reputation for the tribe learning fire-making. Now I understood the trick to earning reputation. Teach the tribe new technologies. When Inyu and the others came back, Bai Shui proudly showed them she could make fire now. The girls were amazed and jealous. Several of them begged me to teach them too, even offering to do anything I wanted. But I only had 2 flint stones, so I told them Bai Shui would be in charge of fire making and could teach everyone else. They accepted that, though their envy of Bai Shui only grew deeper. Bai Hu was especially jealous. She'd planned to ask me about fire making during our bed warming session, but Bai Shui beat her to it. She decided she'd ask me to teach her trap making instead. Later, Bai Shui came to me privately to thank me for teaching her and for trusting her with the flint stones. Then she shyly offered to let me touch her ears as a way of repaying me. I reminded her she'd said her ears weren't supposed to be touched casually. She turned bright red and whispered that if it was me, it was okay. That night, everyone crowded into the cave and slept together on one pile of dry grass. There was zero privacy, which was a problem for my plans with Bai Hu. I made a mental note to improve the tribe's living situation as soon as possible. Bai Hu came over and lay down next to me to fulfill her promise. She rolled over to face me and after a moment of awkward silence, quietly asked if I could teach her how to make hunting traps. I teased her, saying I was too sleepy. She thought for a second, then grabbed my hand and placed it on her head, saying I could pet her ears like Bai Shui had let me, if that would wake me up enough to teach her. I moved my hand away from her head and slid it lower. No, I said. I want to touch here. She had no idea what I meant. The next morning, the system woke me up with a survival reward for lasting 1 day, 3 stone axes. Not bad, but my task list was still empty since the last quest. The system told me new tasks only appear when the tribe faces certain events, so I just have to wait. I'd overslept because of my late night discussion with Bai Hu. When I stepped outside, I found the girls crowded together. Bai Shui was lying on the ground, clutching her stomach in pain. She'd gone to fetch water with the others that morning, but was so thirsty she drank a bowl straight from the source without waiting. The water was cloudy and smelled bad, and it made her sick. Inyu explained that they normally let the water sit for a while before drinking, which reduced the chance of stomach problems. But even that method didn't actually clean the water. It just made it slightly less dangerous. I realized the tribe's water quality was a serious issue. Everyone needed clean water, including me. There was no way I could drink that stuff either. I needed to build some kind of water purification system. Right on cue, the system triggered a new quest: purify the tribe's water source. The reward was 100 corn seeds and 100 reputation. Corn seeds were incredible. Corn is delicious roasted or boiled, grows fast, and one seed can produce hundreds of kernels. With 100 seeds, the tribe could eventually have unlimited food. But I wasn't going to settle for just a simple filter. I decided to build a full water purification and delivery system that could clean the water and pipe it directly to the tribe's camp. That way we'd solve 3 problems at once: clean water, no more long trips to fetch it, and a ready supply for watering crops once we started farming. I quickly came up with a plan: use bamboo to build a complete water purification and delivery system. Bamboo is hollow inside, making it a natural pipe for transporting water. The sections between bamboo joints could serve as filter containers. I'd fill them with charcoal, fine sand, and small stones as filtering layers, then drill holes in the bottom joints to let clean water flow through. By connecting multiple filters in a series along the bamboo pipes, the water would get cleaner with each stage. Best of all, the bamboo grove was right near camp, so materials wouldn't be a problem. I explained the whole idea to the girls. They didn't fully understand the technical details, but Inu summarized it well. The water would come out clean enough to drink immediately, no more waiting, and it would flow straight to camp so nobody had to make trips to the source anymore. Everyone got excited. I gave Inu the 3 stone axes from my morning reward to help with cutting bamboo. I showed them how powerful the axes were by chopping into a tree trunk in one swing. The girls were amazed and fought over who got to use them. Bai Shui, still holding her stomach, stood up and asked what she could do to help. I told her to just rest. I patted her head gently, being careful to avoid her ears this time, but she still blushed. Then I picked her up and carried her back into the cave, telling her that sick girls needed to be taken care of. She buried her red face against my chest and mumbled that I shouldn't do things like this. After settling her in, I noticed Bai Hu was nowhere to be found. I guess she'd gone off to practice the trap-making skills I taught her last night. We'd made a fair trade. I taught her how to build traps, and in return she let me confirm a certain suspicion I'd had about her. I went to check the old boar traps and found Bai Hu stuck at the bottom of one of the pits. She'd gone down to study the bamboo spikes up close, but couldn't climb back out. I teased her a bit, then tossed down a vine to pull her up. Despite the embarrassing situation, she'd actually made some sharp observations. She noticed the spikes needed to be buried deep at an angle with only a short part sticking out. That showed real talent for trap making. When she asked me to explain why it worked that way, I told her I'd teach her during tonight's bed warming session. She hesitated, remembering what happened the night before, and asked if we'd have to do that again. I told her with a straight face that it was part of the bed warming deal. I changed the subject and told her about the water purification project. We went together to the water source and collected fine sand, small stones, and I grabbed the charcoal left over from last night's fire. By midday, I had all the materials ready. I cut the bamboo Inu's team had brought back into sections at the joints, drilled small holes in the bottom of each tube with a bone knife, then layered in stones, sand, and charcoal. Stones to catch big particles, sand for smaller ones, charcoal to absorb tiny impurities and bad smells. I sealed everything with bamboo strips in a cross pattern to hold the layers in place. For a test, I poured dirty water into one filter. It came out noticeably cleaner. A cowhorn girl tried it and said the taste was much better, less sour and bitter, with a hint of bamboo freshness, though still slightly off. I explained that was normal for a single filter, but once multiple filters were connected in series, the water would be much cleaner. The girls couldn't wait to see the full system built, but I told them to be patient. I needed to make several more filter units first before assembling everything together. Once I had enough filter units ready, I led everyone to the water source. Along the way, I marked out a route for the pipeline with sticks. I'd already hollowed out the bamboo tubes with long wooden rods and shaped their ends so they'd fit together snugly with the filters in between. At the water source, I found a spot on higher ground to create an inlet, so gravity would push the water through the system naturally. I also added a woven bamboo mesh at the entrance to block large debris. Back at camp, the girls spotted water flowing from the end of the pipeline before I even got close. The water coming out was clear and transparent. No visible particles, almost no smell, just a light bamboo fragrance. The girls tasted it and loved it. No more sour or scratchy feeling, no more weird taste. Even Inu was amazed. saying nobody would get sick from drinking water anymore. Baihu stared at me in disbelief, wondering how I seemed to know everything. That afternoon, I added some finishing touches, stones under the pipes to prevent rot from ground moisture, fences on both sides for protection against animals, and a bamboo plug at the end that worked like a tap. Push it in to stop the water, pull it out to start the flow. The system confirmed I'd completed the water purification quest and gave me 100 corn seeds and 100 reputation. The seeds were even better than I expected. The system listed their growth cycle at only 60 days, roughly half the normal time for corn. They were high yield, tough, and could handle harsh conditions. Then a new quest immediately appeared: successfully plant a crop. The reward was 10 units of basic fertilizer and 50 reputation. The tribe was about to enter the age of farming. I decided to put off the planting quest until tomorrow since it was already evening and we were all tired from building the water system. There was no rush. I'd only been here 2 days. The next morning, I woke up with a neat row of teeth marks on my arm. Last night, I tried to teach Baihu some new, bed-warming techniques, but I pushed things too far, hurt her by accident, and she bit me in self-defense. I made a mental note not to underestimate the ferocity of a tiger-eared girl. Baihu came in after the others had left, looking guilty. She apologized for biting me. I started to act offended to tease her, but when I saw how genuinely upset she was, I couldn't do it. I told her it was actually my fault. She didn't accept that and knelt beside me, grabbed my arm, and started licking the bite mark. Apparently, beast-eared girls inherited the animal instinct of licking wounds to help them heal. The position was suggestive, to say the least. Of course, that's exactly when Inu walked in and caught us. Baihu froze, face turning red. I calmly told Inu we were just discussing trap-making techniques. She didn't look fully convinced, but I quickly changed the subject. Inu had come to report a real problem. The tribe's food supply was running low. With all the heavy labor over the past 2 days, everyone had been eating more than usual. The dried boar meat would only last 2 more days. I'd solved the water crisis, but food was still the tribe's biggest challenge. The corn seeds I'd just gotten wouldn't help right away since crops take time to grow. After thinking it over, I decided it was time to form a hunting team. In a primitive society, hunting is the fastest and most reliable way to keep everyone fed. When I brought up forming a hunting team, Baihu was immediately on board, saying it would let the tribe eat meat and drink fresh blood every day. Inu liked the idea, but worried about how to actually put it together. I told her to leave it to me and gather everyone outside. After Inu left, Baihu grabbed my arm and begged to join the team. I pretended to hesitate, and she got so desperate she promised not to resist when I did that kind of thing to her at night anymore. I couldn't turn down an offer like that, so I agreed, and then told her I was making her captain. She was the only one who'd learned any hunting skills from me, and she had natural talent for it. She was so shocked and grateful that when I asked if she'd really do anything to thank me, she didn't pull away. I kissed her, and she let me. First kiss, claimed. Outside, I announced the hunting team to everyone. I explained that only 6 members were needed, with Baihu as captain. Then I got serious and warned them about the real dangers and hardships of hunting in the wild. That scared some of them off. Baishui quietly decided to stick with her fire-keeping duties since she knew her body wasn't strong enough. But 5 girls still volunteered: a cowhorn girl, a rabbit-eared girl, a deer-antlered girl, and 2 others. Together with Baihu, that made a full team of 6. I was pleasantly surprised they had that much courage. I told Baihu to take the hunting team members to study the pit traps while I handled something more urgent, planting the corn seeds. I asked Inu to bring the wooden shovels from the cave, then led the rest of the girls to a patch of open grassland near the water source. The soil looked soft and fertile, perfect for farmland. When I mentioned we were going to plant corn, nobody knew what it was. I pulled out a seed and explained that corn is a delicious, sweet crop. Plant 1 seed, and it grows into something that produces lots more. Once it matured, nobody in the tribe would go hungry again. Their eyes lit up at the word food. Baishui pushed in close and sniffed the seed, said it smelled amazing, then tried to lick it before I stopped her by pressing her head back. My hand landed on her ears again by accident, and she went all wobbly and red-faced. I really need to be more careful about that. Inu came back with the shovels, and I had the girls clear all the weeds from the field. Then I demonstrated how to plant. Dig a finger-deep hole, drop 1 seed in, cover it up, then step back about 30 centimeters before planting the next one. Normal corn needs 2 or 3 seeds per hole in case some don't sprout, but the system seeds had a perfect germination rate. so one per hole was enough. I handed out the remaining seeds and let everyone practice. Some of the girls stared at the seeds hungrily, drool literally dripping from their lips. I warned them sternly. These seeds are for planting, not eating. Anyone caught sneaking a taste would get stick education. They didn't know exactly what that meant, but nobody wanted to find out. The girls were excited about planting since they knew corn meant food. They crowded around me asking questions, but picked up the technique fast. Proper depth, proper spacing. All 100 seeds were in the ground quickly. Bai Shui ran to grab water, filling a bucket from the new purification system. She was about to dump the whole thing onto the field, but I stopped her. Just one bowl per seed was enough. She apologized for almost messing up, but I told her not to worry and patted her head. She blushed again, as usual. After watering, I had everyone build a fence around the field with branches to keep animals out. The first farmland of our tribe was complete. The system rewarded me with 10 bags of basic fertilizer and 50 reputation. The fertilizer was incredible. Each bag boosts yield by 30% and cuts the growth cycle in half. One bag covers 20 seeds, so I only needed 5 bags for all 100 plants. That left me 5 extra bags for a second round of fertilizing in 7 days. With the fertilizer applied, the corn's growth time would drop from 60 days to just 30. After a second application in a week, it could shrink to around 11 or 12 days, with even higher yields. The tribe would have corn waste sooner than I'd expected. The system let me apply fertilizer instantly with one click instead of doing it by hand. The moment I used it, the girls screamed. Little yellow-green sprouts were already poking through the soil. The seeds had just been planted minutes ago, and they were already growing. I smiled to myself. It wouldn't be long before everyone got to taste corn for the first time. The girls got excited watching the corn sprout so fast. Bai Shui asked when we'd get to eat it, and I estimated about 20 days. She tried counting on her fingers, but ran out, pouting that it was so many days. She wasn't the sharpest, but honestly that just made her cuter. Inu asked if they still needed to gather berries. I told her yes. The corn wouldn't be ready for weeks. The hunting team wasn't trained yet, and the dried boar meat would only last a couple more days. She headed out with a group to collect berries while I went to check on the hunting team. I found them at the pit traps, listening to Baihu explain how the spikes should be positioned. I was impressed. She'd absorbed everything I'd casually taught her during our nighttime sessions and was passing it on with her own insights. She really did have natural hunting talent. When I stepped in, the girls got excited. But when I asked what they'd learned so far, the answers were weak. One said, a little bit. Another said she could dig a hole. I couldn't blame Baihu for that. These girls had zero hunting experience, and jumping straight to complex pit traps was too advanced for beginners. I changed my approach and started with the absolute basics of hunting: tracking, awareness, movement, simple techniques. I'd build them up gradually before moving to trap building. The girls were eager, hanging on every word. Even Baihu sat down to listen since I'd only taught her trap skills during our private time, never the fundamentals. I trained them until dark. They were tired but happy, sharing what they'd learned with each other. When comparing who'd picked up the most, they all looked at Baihu. She was clearly ahead of everyone else. The girls started arguing over who got to be my bed-warming partner, figuring that's why Baihu learned faster than everyone else. Some even said they'd heard Baihu's voice at night. I quickly shut that down, insisting Baihu was just naturally talented and it had nothing to do with sleeping arrangements. Luckily, some of the more trusting girls backed me up. But this whole situation made me realize I needed to get everyone out of the shared cave soon. Zero privacy was becoming a real problem. Over the next few days, I taught hunting basics during the day and gave Baihu private lessons at night. The girls progressed from fundamental skills to building actual traps, snare traps for small animals, and pit traps for large ones. After lots of practice, they could all put together a complete trap on their own, even if their technique was still a bit rough. The tribe finally had a real hunting team. The system rewarded me with a hunting gift pack and 150 reputation. The pack contained 6 wooden bows with arrows and 6 wooden spears. The bows were made from branches and animal sinew with a range of about 50 meters, not modern quality, but powerful enough for primitive hunting. The spears were sharper than the ones the tribe already had. I demonstrated the bow by shooting an arrow into a distant tree. The girls were amazed. They'd never seen a ranged weapon before. With my total reputation now at 800, I was only 200 away from unlocking the system shop. Baihu immediately wanted to learn archery and even promised to work harder at warming my bed. The other girls all begged to learn too, some offering to warm my bed as well. I pulled out the remaining 5 bows, one for each team member. They cheered, and then one by one came up and kissed me on the cheek. Turns out they'd secretly watched me, and Baihu kissed before and picked it up from that. I pretended to be annoyed about the spying, but honestly, I wasn't complaining. Since I didn't have a spare bow for myself, I taught by standing behind Baihu, guiding her hands on the bow. She got flustered with me pressed so close, but her shots were the best of the group. The other girls got jealous, so I went around and gave each of them hands-on instruction too. They all improved fast after that. Each bow only came with 3 arrows, so the girls had to retrieve them after every round, which slowed practice down. Still, they worked hard all morning. Baihu stood out again. By the end, she could hit a branch 20 meters away. She wasn't satisfied with just accuracy, though. She wanted more power, so she drew the bow to its full extent and drove the arrowhead deep into the wood. The others couldn't match her yet, but they could hit larger targets reliably. In the afternoon, I taught them spear combat, how to use their long spears to defend against large animals and work together as a team to take one down. By evening, they'd gotten a solid handle on that too. Looking at how far they'd come, I decided tomorrow would be their first real hunt. When I woke up on day 10, the system unlocked a daily divination feature with 3 types: hunting, exploration, and daily life. Each cost 100 reputation per use, but the first time was free for all 3. The hunting divination told me that at noon, a large beast would appear about 600 steps northeast of camp. Perfect timing since I'd planned to take the hunting team out for their first real hunt today. The exploration divination revealed a pond downstream from our water source with fish in it. That excited me. The girls had never tasted fish before, and I could already imagine their faces when they tried grilled fish. The daily life divination told me today was a good day to be intimate with Baihu. I coughed awkwardly at that one. Even if I wanted to, there was still no privacy with everyone sleeping in the same cave. That would have to wait until I built proper houses. Baihu came to ask when we were leaving to hunt. I told her to wait a bit. It had been exactly 7 days since the first fertilizing, so I needed to check on the corn and apply the second round. The corn had already grown almost as tall as a person. I used all 5 remaining bags of fertilizer, and the stalk shot up even higher, with small corn cobs already forming. In about 11.5 more days, they'd be fully ripe. After that, I gathered the hunting team. The girls were pumped, boasting about what they'd catch. But instead of heading into the forest, I led them to the water source. Baihu was confused. I smiled and told them I was going to teach them how to hunt in water. She had no idea what that meant or what could possibly be caught in water, but she trusted me completely and got excited to learn. I led the girls downstream about 300 steps and found the small pond the divination had mentioned. It was only 5 or 6 meters across, and I couldn't see any fish at first glance, but the divination said they were there. I sent Baihu and 2 others to gather vines from the forest, and 3 more to collect berries. When they got back, I started weaving a fish trap from the vines. The girls had never heard of fish before, so I explained it was a creature that lives in water, and yes, it was edible. A rabbit-eared girl got especially excited when I said fish tasted as good as boar meat. The trap wasn't hard to make. Build a frame from vines, weave them in a crisscross pattern to cover it, add a funnel-shaped entrance so fish can swim in but not back out, then seal the far end. I crushed the berries and put them inside as bait, then tossed the whole thing into the pond. I tied 2 vines from the trap to a nearby tree so we could pull it out easily later. Baihu seemed doubtful that just throwing a trap in the water would work. I explained how the bait would lure the fish inside, and they'd get stuck, just like the boar pit traps. Then I accidentally reminded her about the time she got stuck in one of those pits herself. She went quiet with embarrassment. I changed the subject and told everyone it was time to head out for the real hunt. According to the divination, the prey would appear about 600 steps northeast around noon. We'd already walked about 300 steps along the water, mostly eastward, so we just needed to adjust direction. I used the sun's position and the thickness of leaves on trees to figure out which way was northeast, and we set off. Around noon, we reached the spot the divination had pointed to. Baihu was skeptical since she couldn't find any animal tracks, but right on schedule, a deafening roar echoed through the forest. The ground started shaking, and a massive black shape burst out of the trees. It was a bear, but not a normal one. This thing was over 3 meters long, bigger than any brown bear. I recognized it from an old book about ancient creatures, a cave bear, a species supposedly extinct in my world. The thing was covered in valuable thick fur, carried tons of meat, and best of all, it was clutching a beehive full of honey. Honey in a primitive world is incredibly precious, nutritious, delicious, and even useful as medicine for wounds. The bear had stolen the hive and was running from a swarm of angry bees chasing it. The girls were terrified by its size. One of them asked if we should build a pit trap. Before I could answer, Baihu spoke up. She correctly pointed out that the bear was still moving and we couldn't predict where it would go, so a pit trap was useless right now. I was impressed with her judgment. I told everyone to follow the bear and wait. We chased it through the forest, barely keeping up despite its huge body. Eventually, the bear shook off the last few bees, stopped by a big tree, and sat down to eat the honey. That's when I panicked a little. I'd already claimed that honey in my mind. It was meant for my girls back at camp. Baihu asked if we should start digging a pit trap now that it had stopped, but I shook my head. By the time we'd finished digging, the bear would have eaten the honey and left. I needed a different plan to take this thing down, and fast. I grabbed Baihu's bow and took aim at the cave bear from about 30 meters away. I pulled the string back as hard as I could and let the arrow fly. It hit the bear's right eye dead on. The beast screamed, but still clutched the beehive. I fired a second arrow into its other eye. Now completely blind, the bear dropped the honey and went berserk, smashing into trees and stumbling everywhere. I turned to the girls and told them this was their moment. They needed to use the spear techniques I taught them and take the bear down themselves. At first they were terrified. The thing was massive and still thrashing around. I told them straight. If they couldn't face a blinded animal, they had no business being on the hunting team. Baihu stepped up as captain and rallied the group. She reminded them they'd trained for this exact situation. The others found their courage and agreed. They wanted to prove themselves as real hunters. I kept firing arrows into the bear's legs to slow it down while Baihu led the charge. She split the team into 2 groups of 3. The first group stabbed with their spears, then immediately pulled back to dodge the bear's blind swipes, just like I'd drilled into them. While the bear turned to attack the first group, the second group struck from behind. They kept rotating like that, hit and retreat, never giving the bear a chance to rest. The girls were smart about it too, targeting the same wounds over and over to make the bleeding worse. Before long, the cave bear collapsed, barely breathing. Their first real hunt was a success. The girls erupted with joy after the cave bear fell. I praised them. For a first hunt, their teamwork was impressive. They really did have potential as hunters. I patted each of them on the head, which made some blush and squirm, while others actually asked for more. Baihu picked up the beehive from the ground and asked what it was. I poked a hole in it, and the sweet smell of honey poured out. I let each girl taste a bit from their palms. When it was Baihu's turn, I dipped my finger in the honey and held it to her lips. She didn't hesitate, just took my finger right into her mouth with a look of pure enjoyment. That caught me completely off guard. The girls went crazy over the honey. They'd never tasted anything so sweet. I told them we'd save the rest and spread it on roasted meat tonight, which would taste even better. They could barely contain themselves. On the way back, we stopped at the pond to check the fish trap. It had worked. 5 or 6 grass carp about 10 centimeters long were inside. Not a huge catch, but enough for everyone to get a taste. We returned to camp at sunset carrying the enormous cave bear, the beehive, and the fish trap. The girls who'd stayed behind were stunned. They crowded around asking questions about everything. The bear, the honey, the strange flopping things in my basket. Inu was quietly amazed that the hunting team had caught something so big on their very first outing. I called Bai Shui over and told her to start a fire for tonight's feast, honey-glazed roasted meat. I absent-mindedly touched her ears while talking to her. She went stiff as a board, face burning red, stammered out, "Yes, Chief," and bolted away. After all the times I'd done that, she still couldn't handle it. I asked Inu to take care of processing the cave bear and the fish. She knew how to handle the bear, but had never dealt with fish before, so I quickly explained. Cut the belly open, remove the guts, scrape off the scales. Simple enough, and she got it right away. Baihu came over asking me to teach her how to make fish traps. I told her it depended on her performance tonight. She took a deep breath, looked around to make sure nobody was watching, then grabbed my hand and placed it on her thigh, saying I could do whatever I wanted to her. My desire to fully claim her was growing stronger by the day. Once the meat was ready and Bai Shui had the fire going, I cracked open the beehive and poured honey into everyone's wooden bowls. Some girls couldn't resist licking it immediately. Then I showed them how to make honey-roasted meat, dip the sliced meat in honey, skewer it on bamboo sticks, and grill it over the fire. The honey caramelized beautifully, making the meat golden and crispy. It was incredible, even by my standards. The girls tried making their own, but burned some of it since they couldn't control the heat well. Still tasted great though. Everyone ate until they couldn't move. Then I grilled the fish. The girls loved it, especially Inu. Being a cat-eared girl, she went crazy for fish and even traded her honey portions for more of it. Baihu, being a tiger type, predictably preferred the meat. The feast lasted 2 hours. Afterward, Inu asked about the bear skin. I told her to dry it and store it for now since it was summer and fur clothing would be too hot. Honestly, I also preferred the girls' current outfits. Grass skirts and leaf tops suited the warm weather just fine. Then I pulled Baihu into the cave early, while the others were still outside. I whispered in her ear that maybe we could try something different tonight while we had some privacy. Her eyes went wide, just as I was about to get intimate with Baihu in the dark cave. The system interrupted me with a notification, 200 reputation points for securing a stable food supply for the tribe. That brought my total to exactly 1,000, which unlocked the system shop. Baihu asked why I'd suddenly stopped, but I shushed her and told her I had something important to look into. She quietly moved aside. The shop had 2 sections, a regular shop and a mystery shop. The regular shop was disappointing. Just basic stuff like stone axes, hammers, nails, and fertilizer, all at high prices. The system explained that better items would unlock as the tribe's civilization level increased. The mystery shop, though, had something special, chili pepper seeds. 100 of them, all fine quality, which was actually 1 tier higher than my corn seeds. The quality scale went normal, good, fine, and premium. Better quality meant faster growth, higher yield, and tougher plants. And the price was only 1 reputation per seed, way cheaper than even a basic stone axe. I bought all 100 immediately, leaving me with 900 reputation. The stats blew me away. Only 15 days to harvest, plantable in any season, extremely high yield, and incredibly resilient. With fertilizer, I could be eating chili peppers within a week. I'd been craving proper seasoning ever since I got here. Grinding dried peppers into powder and sprinkling it on roasted meat would be absolutely incredible. I wondered if the girls could handle the spiciness, though, since they'd never tasted anything like it. Then the system chimed again. The tribe had officially moved past basic food problems and advanced its civilization level. A brand new stage quest had just unlocked. The system gave me a new quest: build houses so the tribe could leave the cave behind. The reward was 100 reputation per house, plus a bonus 500 reputation and an initial skill book once all 7 houses were finished. 2 people per house for 14 tribe members, a sensible setup given our limited tools. This was exactly what I'd been wanting to do anyway. Once everyone had their own place, I'd finally have real privacy with Baihu. No more worrying about being seen or heard by a dozen other girls sleeping right next to us. I decided to start construction the next day. That night, I didn't push things too far with Baihu, just a taste. Our own private house was only days away. The next morning, I had the girls clear a new field next to the corn plot and planted all 100 chili pepper seeds. When Bai Shui asked if we were planting more corn, I told her these were chili peppers, mainly used for seasoning. I joked that eating one raw would make fire come out of her mouth. She took me literally and asked if that meant she wouldn't need flintstones anymore, since she could just eat a pepper to start fires. I couldn't help but laugh and pat her head. She immediately went red and wobbly, mumbling about me touching that place again. I showed everyone how to plant the peppers, similar to corn but with different depth and spacing. They picked it up fast and had all 100 seeds in the ground quickly. After watering the pepper seeds, I bought 5 bags of fertilizer from the system shop for 250 reputation and applied them all at once. The seeds sprouted instantly and shot up with visible stems and leaves. Bai Shui asked when we'd get to eat them. I told her 7 or 8 days. She counted on her fingers, and this time they were enough. She jumped up cheering. Then I gathered everyone and announced our next big project: building wooden houses. The cave was cramped, humid, and uncomfortable. My plan was 7 houses, 2 people per house. Bai Shui supported me first, then Baihu, who pointed out the cave was hot and sweaty, especially since I always pressed up against her at night, forcing her to take off clothes, which gave me opportunities to do things to her. Inu agreed too, and nobody objected. The girls started pairing up to pick roommates. When Baihu tried to join them, I pulled her back. She was my bed warmer, so obviously she'd be living with me. She blinked and said, "Oh," without realizing what that really meant for her. I decided to build with bamboo since it was easy to get and work with. I bought 10 stone axes from the shop for 100 reputation and set the girls to cutting bamboo. We spent the whole first day chopping and drying bamboo in the sun to remove moisture. The next day, I started actual construction. I taught the girls the process. First, pick 5 thick bamboo poles for the foundation posts. Char the buried ends with fire to prevent rot and insect damage. Plant them at the 4 corners and center to form a square frame. Then connect them with thinner bamboo beams running horizontally and vertically, tied together with strong vines. Step by step, the tribe's first real house was taking shape. With the frame done, I moved on to the walls. I had the girls split bamboo into thin strips and weave them into tight panels, like making a basket. These woven walls blocked wind well and kept warmth in. We fixed them to the frame with vines and wooden nails I bought from the shop, then coated everything with a thick layer of mud for extra insulation. For the roof, I designed an upside-down V shape so rainwater would run off instead of pooling. We laid thin bamboo poles across the top and covered them with big leaves and dry grass to keep out rain. I had the girls weave a bamboo door and window, then laid crushed stones on the floor to block moisture from the ground. The stones were uncomfortable to walk on, so I added a layer of dried bamboo boards on top. That solved the floor problem perfectly. The system confirmed the first house was complete and gave me 100 reputation. It had taken 3 full days and cost me 150 reputation in tools, leaving me with 500. But it was worth it. The girls had learned how to build houses, and I finally had my own private space. Before nightfall, I built a 2-person bed from wood, padded it with dry grass, then remembered the cave bear hide we'd saved. I got it from Inu. She'd already dried and treated it. It was soft and perfect as a mattress cover. Inu mentioned our food was almost gone again since the hunting team had spent 3 days building instead of hunting. I told her not to worry, Baihu's team would go out tomorrow, and with my divination feature, finding prey was guaranteed. That evening, I pulled Baihu into our new house. She loved it, bouncing around, knocking on the bamboo floor, leaning out the window, rolling on the fur-covered bed saying how comfortable it was. She asked if we were really sleeping here tonight instead of the cave. I said yes, climbed onto the bed, and pinned her underneath me. She looked up confused and asked what I was doing. I grinned and told her it was time to teach her what a bed-warming girl was really supposed to do. Early the next morning, I sneaked out with the bear hide to wash it at the water source. Inu caught me and asked why I was carrying it. I mumbled that it got dirty last night. She offered to wash it for me, but I clutched it tight and refused. I couldn't let her see what was on it. She was smart enough not to press further and walked away. Once she was gone, I unfolded the hide and looked at the red stain on it, grinning to myself. Last night with Baihu had been worth the wait. Back at the house, Baihu was watching me from the window, looking conflicted. She'd bitten my arm again during last night's activities when it hurt, and she felt guilty about it. She came out, apologized, then knelt beside me and started licking the bite marks without a word. That was just how beast-eared girls treated wounds. I let her do it. After breakfast, the building crew got back to work on the remaining houses. But the tribe was out of food again since the hunters had spent 3 days on construction. I gathered the hunting team and told them they'd need to go out alone today. I had to stay and supervise building. The girls looked nervous about going without me. Baihu stepped up and promised she'd bring back prey. I believed her. Before they left, I spent 100 reputation on a hunting divination. It pointed to a large beast about 1,000 steps southeast, appearing around noon. I passed the information to Baihu. She was baffled about how I knew, but I told her I'd explain when she got back, then gave her a playful slap on the behind to send her off. With the hunting team gone, I led the rest of the girls back to building. They'd gotten much better at it. Hardly needed my help anymore, just a little guidance. At this rate, the second house would be done in 2 days. While I stayed behind to build houses, Baihu led the hunting team to the location I'd pointed out, about 1 kilometer southeast. Right on schedule, they found a giant deer grazing there, even bigger than the cave bear, with massive antlers spreading out like tree branches. The girls were amazed that my directions were spot on and started asking Baihu about my divination skill. Baihu focused everyone on the hunt. She decided against a pit trap since they had no digging tools and the deer's huge antlers would get stuck awkwardly. Instead, she used the same strategy from the cave bear fight. She ordered the others to shoot the deer's legs while she aimed for its eyes. On her command, 6 arrows flew at once. Baihu nailed the deer's left eye perfectly. 3 other arrows hit its legs, and it stumbled down. But the deer got back up and tried to run. The girls chased it, firing more arrows. Baihu eventually blinded its other eye with a second shot. Even blind and bleeding, the deer kept running. The team pursued it, recycling fallen arrows as they went. When it finally slowed from blood loss, Baihu threw her spear like a javelin, a technique I'd taught them, and pinned it through the hindquarters into a tree. She leaped onto the spear and drove it deeper, immobilizing the deer completely. The others rushed in and finished it off. It was their first successful hunt without me. Baihu was proud, telling the team this was just the beginning. As they were about to carry the deer home, something rustled in a nearby bush. Baihu crept over with her spear and carefully parted the branches. A small furry creature leaped out at her. She dodged and grabbed it midair. What Baihu had caught was a baby wolf cub, tiny, with blue eyes, white paws, pink pads, and a little gray tail. It was skinny and clearly hadn't eaten in days. It must have gotten separated from its pack and was drawn to the smell of the deer blood. Baihu wasn't sure what to do with it. Killing a baby animal felt wrong, but releasing it meant certain death in the wild. A wolf-eared girl on the team suggested bringing it back to camp, and Baihu agreed. She'd let me decide. That afternoon, the hunting team returned with the massive deer and the wolf cub tied to a spear. The girls back at camp cheered at the size of the kill. I was impressed too. Taking down a deer that big without me proved the hunting team had truly matured. Then I noticed the little creature on Baihu's spear. When she showed me and explained the story, I recognized it immediately. A wolf pup, probably not even weaned yet. In a primitive society, this was a treasure. Wolves are the ancestors of dogs. If I could tame it, it would eventually help with hunting, tracking, and guarding the camp at night. I told Baihu to keep it. She looked skeptical about what use such a small thing could be, but she trusted my judgment and untied it. The poor cub was terrified, surrounded by all these tall girls staring down at it. I cut a small piece of raw deer meat, held it in my palm, and made soft clicking sounds, mimicking the noise pups hear when nursing. The cub slowly crept toward me, though it kept stopping and backing up nervously. I wasn't in a rush. Building trust with a wild animal takes patience and time. After a while, the wolf cub relaxed and crept up to my hand. It sniffed the deer meat carefully, then gobbled it down. Its teeth weren't fully grown yet, so it had to chew slowly, but once it tasted the meat, it wanted more. I kept feeding it small pieces until it got comfortable enough to lie at my feet. Baihu came over to ask about the divination skill I'd promised to explain. I told her it was an ability that lets me predict where and when prey will appear. She immediately wanted to learn it, even offering to do last night's kind of thing, again as payment. I told her it wasn't that I didn't want to teach her. I literally couldn't. It was a personal ability only I could use. She was disappointed. To cheer her up, I pointed at the wolf cub and told her that once it grew up, it could help the hunting team find prey with its powerful sense of smell, making my divination almost unnecessary. She was surprised but interested. I had her try feeding the cub some meat. At first it bared its tiny teeth at her, probably still angry about being tied to her spear, but eventually it gave in and ate from her hand. She was thrilled. By evening, the cub had bonded with me and followed me everywhere. I let it sleep in a corner of my house. Once it was asleep, Baihu and I got into bed, and I informed her it was time for her nightly duties again. Over the next several days, everyone focused on building houses. The giant deer provided enough food that the hunting team could help with construction too. By the 7th day, we'd finished 3 houses. That's also when the chili peppers ripened, rows of bright red peppers hanging from the plants. The girls stared at them curiously. Bai Shui asked if she could try one. I warned her she might cry from the heat, but she insisted she'd be fine. I crossed my arms and waited for the show. Bai Shui picked a pepper and bit into it. At first she seemed fine, but seconds later her face twisted up. She started panting and fanning her mouth, and tears poured down her cheeks. She cried that it was terrible. Every other girl who'd been about to try one immediately backed off. I tapped her on the head and told her to go drink some cold water. While she ran off, I had everyone pick all the peppers. The system surprised me with a harvest reward, 100 sweet potato seedlings and 200 reputation. The sweet potatoes had a 90-day growth cycle, which was long, but fertilizer could cut that in half. I had Inu clear a new field next to the pepper plot, handed out the seedlings, and everyone planted them quickly. I bought 5 more bags of fertilizer and applied them right away, which ate through my new reputation, and then some. I was down to 550. I told Inu to pull up the old pepper plant since I already had plenty of seeds and didn't need a weaker second harvest. Then I grabbed a handful of peppers and ground them into a paste with a stone bowl and pestle. They were too wet to make proper powder, but the paste worked like a dipping sauce. I roasted some deer meat, dipped a piece, and asked who wanted to try. Every single girl refused. Bai Shui's meltdown had traumatized them all, even Bai who passed. So I ate it myself. It was delicious. The spicy kick on grilled meat was exactly what I'd been missing. The girls watched me enjoy it without crying and got confused. Bai Shui asked why I wasn't in tears. I pointed out that she'd bitten into a raw pepper while I was using just a little as a dip with meat. Totally different experience. One by one, I could see the others getting tempted, swallowing their drool as they watched me eat. Bai was the first brave enough to try the chili sauce with her meat. She dipped a piece of roasted deer and took a bite. Her eyes lit up. The spicy kick transformed the bland meat into something completely different. When she told the others it really was better, everyone went wild wanting to try. I had Inu bring more peppers and stone bowls, ground several batches of sauce, and passed them around. Every girl loved it. Even Bai Shui, who'd been crying from the raw pepper earlier, couldn't stop eating. The wolf cub whined and circled my feet, wanting some too, but it was too young for spicy food. I gave it some raw deer meat instead, which it happily accepted. Over the past few days it had gotten comfortable with everyone in the tribe and didn't flinch when the girls petted or fed it. Baihu suggested we give the cub a proper name since it was part of the tribe now. The girls threw out ideas based on its white paws, gray fur, and blue eyes. When they asked me, I said, Wonkai, a classic dog name from my world. It felt fitting since wolves are the ancestors of dogs. The girls thought it sounded a bit odd, but catchy, and they kept repeating it happily. The cub had no clue what they were saying, but it would learn eventually. Over the following days, building continued, and the hunting team went out once more. I also picked out seeds from the harvested peppers, dried them, and planted a second batch. No fertilizer this time, since we had plenty of peppers stored. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. The corn finally ripened. I stood in front of the field looking at rows of golden, plump corn cobs and felt genuinely excited. With corn, the tribe now had a real staple food. It could be boiled, roasted, popped into popcorn, or even ground into flour for all kinds of things. The hunting team wouldn't need to go out as often anymore. Nobody would go hungry again. Bai Shui asked if the corn was safe to eat directly. She was still traumatized from the raw pepper incident. I told her it could be eaten raw but tasted way better roasted, so I sent her to start a fire. Meanwhile, Inu led everyone into the field to pick the corn cobs. I also told them to keep the dried stalks for firewood. I showed the girls how to roast corn, skewer it on a bamboo stick, and rotate it slowly over the fire for even heat. Soon the smell filled the air, and everyone was drooling. Bai Shui's corn was done first since she'd held it too close to the flames, but it came out half golden and half burnt black. She bit right in without waiting and burned her mouth. I told her to be patient. When she finally ate it, she loved the golden parts but spat out the burnt bits, complaining they were bitter. Then she spotted my perfectly roasted corn, evenly golden all around, and begged to trade. I refused since hers looked like a dog had chewed on it. In desperation, she offered to become my bed-warming girl in exchange. Baihu muttered that being a bed warmer wasn't as simple as Bai Shui thought. That sparked everyone's curiosity. The girls peppered Baihu with questions about what bed warming actually involved. She turned bright red, stammered, and couldn't bring herself to explain, finally pushing it onto me. All eyes turned to me. I awkwardly changed the subject back to eating corn, but the girls wouldn't let it go. One after another, they said they also wanted to be my bed-warming partner and asked me to explain what it involved so they could prepare. I looked around the group. Every single one of them was nodding, including Inu, who just looked down shyly. I took a sharp breath. That many volunteers might actually be more than I could handle. The next day, I planted 300 more corn seeds across 2 new fields. I didn't plant all the thousands of seeds I had. Some were low quality. We needed corn to eat right now, and our small population couldn't manage too much farmland anyway. 300 was enough for daily use, especially after fertilizer boosted the yield. But 15 bags of fertilizer cost me 750 reputation, which completely wiped me out. 3 days later, the final house was finished. All 7 were done, and every girl in the tribe had a proper home now. The system gave me 500 bonus reputation and an initial skill book. I used the book immediately and got pottery-making technology. Knowledge about shaping clay, firing it, and creating different vessels flooded into my mind. This was huge. Pottery meant we could boil water, cook soups and stews, store liquids properly, even brew alcohol eventually. I was already imagining a pot of corn and rib soup. And once the next corn harvest came in, I could use the surplus to make wine. Sitting in a wooden house, a beast-eared girl on one arm and a cup of homemade wine in the other, that would be the life. A new quest popped up right away. Make pottery to improve the tribe's living conditions. Every type of pottery I created would earn 100 reputation, and making 3 or more types would unlock a bonus of 300 extra reputation plus a mystery shop refresh ticket. That ticket was key. The mystery shop had been empty since I bought the chili seeds, and apparently it needed a special voucher to restock. Completing this quest could net me 600 reputation total plus access to whatever new item appeared in the mystery shop. To make pottery, I needed clay. I knew it could be found near rivers, and there was one not far from camp. I sent Inu to gather everyone with shovels and headed there first. After buying a shovel from the system shop, I started digging and quickly hit a layer of smooth, sticky brownish-yellow clay. Perfect quality with almost no impurities. When the girls arrived, Bai Shui asked why I was playing with mud. I corrected her. It was clay for making pottery, not playing. I explained that pottery would improve our daily lives. They didn't fully understand, but they trusted me completely. The girls helped dig out a pile of clay. I laid some broad leaves on the ground, mixed the clay with water, and started shaping it by hand. I began with the simplest thing, a bowl. Our current wooden bowls rotted and smelled over time, and stone ones were too heavy and could chip teeth. Clay bowls would be light and durable. I shaped several pieces at once for efficiency rather than firing them one at a time. Bai Shui asked if she could try. I said sure. Plenty of clay to go around, and if the girls learned this skill, they could make pottery on their own later. Bai Hu and Inu wanted to join too. Bai Shui and Inu both copied my finished pieces. Bai Hu wanted to be creative and make something original. She thought hard, then started shaping something. At first I thought she was making a jar, but it kept getting longer and thinner. I suddenly realized what she was sculpting. It was shaped exactly like something from our private nighttime activities. My face went red, and I grabbed her hands to stop her. "You can't make that?" I told her. She looked confused. I coughed and said it would be useless even if we fired it. She was disappointed. She'd wanted to surprise me. I told her to just copy my designs from now on, before she created anything else embarrassing. I finished shaping a few more bowls and jars while the girls completed their first attempts. Their pottery looked crooked and rough, but for beginners, it wasn't bad. Next, I needed a kiln. Firing pottery in an open campfire gives poor results, uneven heat, and low temperatures. A proper enclosed kiln traps heat inside, making everything hotter and more uniform. I dug a pit in the ground, carved a channel at one end for feeding in firewood, then stacked dirt and stones over the top, leaving a small vent hole for smoke. Simple but effective. I sent Inu to collect a large amount of firewood since firing takes most of a day. While she was gone, I set all the shaped pottery in the shade to dry out. Bai Shui asked if the pottery would go into the hole I dug, and I explained that firing in the kiln was the most critical step. Without it, the clay pieces were useless. Once the firewood arrived, I loaded the pottery into the kiln, packed wood underneath, and had Bai Shui light it. She'd become quite skilled at fire starting since I gave her that job. I told her to keep the fire going strong and not let it die. Meanwhile, I had the others dig more clay so I could make bigger, more complex pieces, a cooking pot, a basin, a water jug. For these I used a technique called coil building, rolling clay into long ropes and stacking them in spirals, then smoothing the surface with my hands and a bone knife. The girls couldn't master this method yet, so they stuck to simple hand-shaped bowls. Firing took all afternoon, and then I had to wait until evening for the kiln to cool down. Pulling pottery out too early would make it crack or explode. Once the temperature finally dropped, the girls carefully removed everything. The results looked great, smooth, deep brown pieces with nice shapes. Most survived intact, with only a few cracked. Bai Shui pouted because hers looked ugly compared to mine. Bai Hu quietly hid hers behind her back. It was even worse than Bai Shui's. Only Inu's jar came out looking halfway decent. The system confirmed the quest was complete. 600 reputation and 1 mystery shop refresh ticket. Rewards collected. The 600 reputation brought my total to 1,300. The the richest I'd been since arriving. I immediately used the mystery shop refresh ticket, and a new item appeared. An initial skill book for weaving, priced at 300 reputation. Weaving was incredibly practical. With it I could make baskets, mats, bags, and most importantly, proper clothes. Right now the girls just tied a few big leaves together with a vine. No real protection from wind, sun, or cold. Woven clothing would be a huge upgrade. I bought the book without hesitation, dropping to 1,000 reputation, and used it instantly. Knowledge of dozens of weaving techniques flooded my brain. How to turn vines, plant fibers, and dried grass into all sorts of useful items. My first priority was weaving a grass mat for the bed. The wooden boards were painfully hard, and the dry grass on top kept shifting around during my nightly activities with Baihu. A proper woven mat would fix that problem for both of us. But that project would have to wait until tomorrow. Bai Shui tugged my sleeve, complaining her stomach was growling. They'd spent all day on pottery, and everyone was starving. I told the girls to grab the finished pottery and head back to camp. Tonight, I'd make them something brand new. They asked what it was. I smiled and said corn and rib soup. Now that we had a clay cooking pot, we weren't limited to just roasting anymore. We had leftover ribs from yesterday's hunt, plenty of corn, and some chili powder for seasoning. I was absolutely certain that girls who'd never eaten boiled food before would fall in love with it at first taste. The 600 reputation brought my total to 1,300, the richest I'd been since arriving. I immediately used the mystery shop refresh ticket, and a new item appeared. An initial skill book for weaving, priced at 300 reputation. Weaving was incredibly practical. With it I could make baskets, mats, bags, and most importantly, proper clothes. Right now the girls just tied a few big leaves together with a vine. No real protection from wind, sun, or cold. Woven clothing would be a huge upgrade. I bought the book without hesitation, dropping to 1,000 reputation, and used it instantly. Knowledge of dozens of weaving techniques flooded my brain. How to turn vines, plant fibers, and dried grass into all sorts of useful items. My first priority was weaving a grass mat for the bed. The wooden boards were painfully hard, and the dry grass on top kept shifting around during my nightly activities with Baihu. A proper woven mat would fix that problem for both of us. But that project would have to wait until tomorrow. Bai Shui tugged my sleeve, complaining her stomach was growling. They'd spent all day on pottery, and everyone was starving. I told the girls to grab the finished pottery and head back to camp. Tonight, I'd make them something brand new. They asked what it was. I smiled and said corn and rib soup. Now that we had a clay cooking pot, we weren't limited to just roasting anymore. We had leftover ribs from yesterday's hunt, plenty of corn, and some chili powder for seasoning. I was absolutely certain that girls who'd never eaten boiled food before would fall in love with it at first taste. Back at camp, everyone got busy preparing for the meal. I set up a simple stone stove on open ground, placed the new clay pot on top, and put Bai Shui and Baihu to work, one fetching firewood, the other hauling water. The pot was big, designed to feed the whole tribe, so Baihu had to make several trips to fill it 2/3 full. Inyu brought over a basin full of pre-blanched ribs. We dumped them all into the pot. Wang Kai came running over at the smell of raw meat, whining and staring at the bones, but I told him to wait his turn. He obediently trotted off, though his eyes never left the food. Watching Bai Shui struggle with the firewood made me realize we needed to start stockpiling fuel. The tribe was using more and more wood every day, and scrambling for it at the last minute wasn't going to work anymore. I made a mental note to have the girls chop and dry some trees tomorrow. I let the ribs simmer for about an hour before adding the cut corn and some chili for flavor. Another half hour of cooking, and the smell was driving everyone crazy. The girls kept asking when it was ready, practically drooling. When I finally said they could eat, they rushed forward with their new clay bowls. I served everyone one by one. The reaction was exactly what I expected, pure amazement. The combination of sweet corn, tender meat, and spicy broth was unlike anything they'd ever tasted. Even Wang Kai got a bowl and lapped it up with his tail wagging. Baihu asked me how I knew how to do everything: hunting, cooking, building. I leaned close to her ear and said I had an even more impressive skill she hadn't seen yet. Her eyes lit up and she eagerly said she wanted to try it. I grinned and told her she'd find out tonight during bed warming. Her face went blank as she realized what I meant. The next morning it was raining hard, so I gave everyone the day off. Baihu was so excited to share the news that she ran out into the rain before I could stop her. She came back soaked, her wet clothes clinging to every curve of her body. I couldn't help staring. I told her I wanted her to warm my bed. She protested that bed warming was a nighttime thing. I informed her there was also a daytime version, and it was part of her duties as my dedicated bed warmer. She hesitated but agreed. A promise was a promise. Half an hour later, I felt dizzy and drained. The system popped up with a warning. My body was severely low on salt. That explained the weakness I'd been feeling lately. I'd been in this world almost a month without eating any salt. The girls supplemented theirs by drinking animal blood, but I'd never been able to do that. The tiny amount of salt in roasted meat wasn't nearly enough. Now that we had pottery, I could actually extract salt. I just needed to find a salt source. Our tribe wasn't near the ocean, so it wouldn't be easy. Then I remembered the exploration divination. I spent 100 reputation and got my answer. Inside the cave where we used to store water, there was a narrow crack. Follow it down about 50 steps, and I'd find an underground salt spring. The salt had been right under our noses this whole time. I closed the system and headed for the cave to check it out. I went into the cave and asked Baihu where they used to store water before I built the purification system. She pointed to a smaller cave branching off to the left from the living area. When we got inside, it was dark and damp, with just some rotten old wooden containers left behind. I searched the walls and floor for the crack the divination had mentioned, but couldn't see it. I figured the old containers might be blocking it, so Baihu and I cleared everything out. Sure enough, hidden behind the junk was a narrow rock crevice, about half an arm's length long and 1 finger wide. I pressed my ear against it and heard flowing water underneath. The salt spring was down there. The crack was way too small for anyone to fit through, so I sent Baihu to get the others. While she was gone, I bought 5 stone pickaxes from the system shop at 10 reputation each. The space was tight, so 5 workers was the most it could hold. When everyone arrived, I explained that beneath us was an underground salt spring. Salt could replace the animal blood they'd been forcing themselves to drink, and it would make all our food taste better. The girls got excited. None of them actually enjoyed drinking blood, they just did it to stay healthy. Now there was an alternative. Baihu volunteered first to do the digging, along with 4 other strong girls. I taught them how to use the pickaxes and left them to work. About half an hour later, I heard a crash. The crack had broken open into a hole big enough for a person to climb through. I looked down and saw a deep passage leading underground. I asked for a vine rope. Bai Shue's hand shot up and she sprinted off, returning quickly with a long vine. I gave her a thumbs up and jokingly told her she was now a candidate to become my second bed-warming girl. She was thrilled and thanked me enthusiastically, not understanding what that actually meant. Looking at her innocent face, I felt a little guilty. Even without any laws in this world, she looked too pure and young for me to make a move on. I tied a vine to a rock at the top and lowered myself down the passage. It was narrow, just wide enough for one person, but only about 10 meters deep. At the bottom, I found myself in a spacious underground cavern. I told everyone to stay up top until I gave the order, but soon the vine started shaking. I looked up, annoyed, and saw a pair of long white legs coming down. Baihu. Before I could finish scolding her, she got startled by my shout, lost her grip, and fell right on top of me. She landed sitting on my face, basically. She panicked and jumped off, apologizing frantically. I wanted to lecture her, but she looked so guilty I let it go. She said she'd come down because she was worried about my safety. We walked a bit further into the cavern and found exactly what the divination had described. A small pool with water bubbling up from below, forming a half-meter fountain in the center. I scooped some up and tasted it. Extremely salty. This was a high-quality salt spring. If we boiled this water down, we'd get plenty of salt. The underground air was too damp and stuffy for evaporation, so we needed to bring the water up. I sent Baihu back to tell the others to lower down all our clay jars. Inu organized everything from above, and soon jars came down on the vine ropes. Baihu and I filled every single one. We tied the full jars to the vine and hauled them up one by one, then climbed out ourselves. I let Baihu go first, purely out of gentlemanly courtesy, of course. The view from below had nothing to do with it. Back in the cave, Inu looked at the jars of salt water and asked if this was really what could replace animal blood. Before I could answer, Bai Shue had already stuck her tongue in one of the jars to taste it. She nearly gagged. It was way salter than blood. I called her a silly girl and explained that we couldn't drink the water directly. We needed to boil it down until the water evaporated, leaving behind white crystals called salt. Just a tiny bit added to food would be enough to keep everyone's body healthy. The girls didn't understand words like evaporation or extraction, so I told them not to worry about the science and just follow my instructions. I asked Inu to bring the large clay basin I'd made yesterday and to collect as much firewood as possible. Unfortunately, we didn't have much stored firewood, and the rain had soaked everything in the forest. I could only process 2 jars of salt water instead of all of them. We also needed firewood for tonight's dinner. Bai Shui started the fire, but I took over stoking duties myself because controlling the heat was important. At first, I kept the fire high to boil off water quickly. Once it started bubbling, I lowered the heat to prevent splashing. When white crystals began forming, I reduced it even further so the salt would crystallize slowly into larger, purer grains. The whole process took over 2 hours. When it was done, the girls crowded around the basin, amazed at the white crystals inside. The salt looked clean with almost no impurities. With this, my body salt deficiency would be fixed, and the girls would never have to drink animal blood again. I stored the salt in a small lidded jar and gave it to Inu to keep somewhere cool and dry. The remaining salt water would have to wait until we had more firewood. That evening, I added salt to our food for the first time, both the corn rib soup and the chili roasted meat. The difference was incredible. The girls loved it and finally understood what had been missing from all their meals. My own body felt revitalized after getting the salt it had been starving for. With my energy back, I whispered to Bai Hu that tonight she'd witness my full power. She had no idea what she was in for. The next morning, the system woke me with a new feature for surviving 30 days, a detection ability that could identify any object I looked at. I tested it on the bear hide. It showed the material, description, and uses. Then I looked at Bai Hu sleeping next to me and scanned a few things I probably shouldn't have. She woke up and caught me staring at certain areas, so I quickly changed the subject. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the forest was still muddy and wet, too soggy for chopping trees. Then I noticed clusters of red mushrooms growing on the ground nearby. I used my new detection skill on them. Poisonous red mushrooms, not edible, but that gave me an idea. With this ability, I could now tell safe mushrooms from dangerous ones at a glance. Mushrooms are nutritious and delicious, perfect for soup, especially with wild chicken. I gathered everyone for a mushroom picking trip, but when I mentioned mushrooms, Inu and Bai Hu both looked scared. Turns out they'd actually eaten mushrooms before, the poisonous kind, back when food was scarce. They'd gotten violently sick for days. I was shocked at how reckless they'd been, but also realized I'd need to teach them which mushrooms were safe. Inu explained that they'd eaten those poisonous mushrooms years ago because they looked like berries. They had no way of knowing what was safe except by trying things. Bai Hu added that she'd thought they were all going to die, but they recovered after a few days. I told them the red mushrooms they'd eaten were mildly toxic, enough to make you sick, but not enough to kill. If they'd picked a more dangerous variety, things could have ended very differently. Inu asked why I'd want to take them mushroom picking if mushrooms were dangerous. I explained that not all mushrooms are poisonous, just like not all berries are edible. The ones I'd lead them to would be safe and delicious. When they asked how I could tell the difference, I just smiled and said to follow me. In the forest, we quickly found a patch of yellow, trumpet-shaped mushrooms with wavy edges. I used my detection skill, chanterelles, non-toxic, with a fruity aroma. Bai Shui sniffed them and confirmed the smell, amazed I could identify them just by looking. Nearby, we also found shiitake mushrooms growing on a dead tree, which were also safe to eat. I sent everyone out to search the surrounding area and bring back whatever mushrooms they found for me to check. The girls scattered happily into the forest like it was a game. Bai Hu quietly asked how I could tell which mushrooms were safe. I raised an eyebrow and told her it depended on her performance tonight. She clenched her fist and promised to do her best. Then Bai Shui came running back holding a big mushroom, flesh-colored with an unusually thick stem she couldn't even wrap her hand around, topped with a flat cap that bulged slightly outward like an umbrella. Before I could scan it, Bai Hu spoke up and said it was edible. I was confused. I hadn't taught her anything yet. Bai Shui was equally shocked. Bai Hu shook her head and said she didn't know how to identify mushrooms, but she'd seen something that looked exactly like this one growing on my body, and she'd even tasted it before. Both Bai Shui and I just stared at her in stunned silence. Bai Shui innocently asked to see the mushroom growing on my body, since Bai Hu had apparently eaten it. I told her to ignore Bai Hu's nonsense. Bai Hu caught on that she'd said too much and quickly took it back, claiming she'd made it up. Bai Shui bought it. Of course, people don't grow mushrooms, and happily showed me a big mushroom she'd found. I scanned it. King oyster mushroom, safe to eat. She cheered and ran off to pick more. Once she was gone, I sternly told Baihu never to mention that kind of thing in front of others again. I framed it as a bedwarmer's exclusive privilege. If other girls found out, they'd want her position. That convinced her instantly. She shook her head frantically and promised to keep quiet. By noon, we'd collected a huge haul of wild mushrooms. I made a pot of mushroom, corn, and meat soup with chanterelles, shiitake, king oyster mushrooms, plus corn, meat, and chili. When the lid came off, the rich aroma drove everyone wild. The girls fought over bowls, most drinking at least two. Bai Shue's belly was round as a ball, and she still wanted more. I asked Baihu what she thought. She leaned close and whispered that the soup tasted better than my mushroom. I had no words. After lunch, Baihu took the hunting team out for more game, while I sent the rest of the girls to chop trees and stockpile firewood. We needed plenty for cooking and for boiling down the remaining salt water still sitting in the cave. I went to the river myself to look for weaving materials and found a patch of bulrush, tough, flexible grass perfect for making mats. I cut a huge bundle and spread it out to dry in the sun back at camp. When Inu asked what I was doing, I said I was making a sleeping mat because the bed was too hard. The real reason was that the hard surface was ruining my nightly activities with Baihu, but I kept that to myself. Inu reminded me we still had jars of salt water waiting. Since the girls had gathered plenty of firewood, I told her to get Bai Shue to start a fire while I fetched the remaining jars. Time to finish extracting the rest of the salt. I brought out all the remaining salt water jars and poured 5 of them into the big clay basin at once. This time we had plenty of firewood, so I could work at full capacity. Inu asked if the girls should keep chopping trees, but I told her we had enough wood for several days. Instead, I sent her to the river to cut more bulrush grass so I could weave sleeping mats for everyone in the tribe. By evening, I'd finished extracting the salt, and Inu's group had brought back a big load of bulrush. But the sun went down before it could dry properly, so we'd have to continue drying it tomorrow. Then Bai Shue came to me looking worried. Baihu and the hunting team still weren't back. It had been hours since they'd left after lunch. I told her we'd wait a bit longer, and if they didn't show up, I'd go looking for them. I was getting genuinely concerned. Finally, I spotted figures stumbling out of the forest. It was the hunting team, but something was wrong. They shouted that Baihu was hurt. My stomach dropped. I ran over and found Baihu limping, supported by the cowhorn girl. Her right foot was injured. The other 4 girls were hauling a large animal carcass behind them. Baihu tried to smile and play it off, saying she'd just cut her foot chasing prey and it would heal in a few days. The cowhorn girl backed her up, saying beast-eared girls heal fast. They'd even recovered from eating poisonous mushrooms before. I asked Bai Shue to confirm, and she shyly admitted it was true because she'd been the one who'd injured her foot before. Of course she was. That girl managed to be involved in every mishap. Still, I wanted to check the wound myself. I told Baihu to sit on a log and lift her foot. I knelt down, held her injured foot, and examined it closely. She watched me for a moment, then quietly asked, "Are you going to lick it?" I brought out all the remaining salt water jars and poured 5 of them into the big clay basin at once. This time we had plenty of firewood, so I could work at full capacity. Inu asked if the girls should keep chopping trees, but I told her we had enough wood for several days. Instead, I sent her to the river to cut more bulrush grass so I could weave sleeping mats for everyone in the tribe. By evening, I'd finished extracting the salt, and Inu's group had brought back a big load of bulrush. But the sun went down before it could dry properly, so we'd have to continue drying it tomorrow. Then Bai Shue came to me looking worried. Baihu and the hunting team still weren't back. It had been hours since they'd left after lunch. I told her we'd wait a bit longer, and if they didn't show up, I'd go looking for them. I was getting genuinely concerned. Finally, I spotted figures stumbling out of the forest. It was the hunting team, but something was wrong. They shouted that Baihu was hurt. My stomach dropped. I ran over and found Baihu limping, supported by the cowhorn girl. Her right foot was injured. The other 4 girls were hauling a large animal carcass behind them. Baihu tried to smile and play it off, saying she'd just cut her foot chasing prey and it would heal in a few days. The cowhorn girl backed her up, saying beast-eared girls heal fast. They'd even recovered from eating poisonous mushrooms before. I asked Bai Shue to confirm, and she shyly admitted it was true because she'd been the one who'd injured her foot before. Of course she was. That girl managed to be involved in every mishap. Still, I wanted to check the wound myself. I told Baihu to sit on a log and lift her foot. I knelt down, held her injured foot, and examined it closely. She watched me for a moment, then quietly asked, "Are you going to lick it?" Baihu asked if I was going to lick her wound. That's how beast-eared girls normally treat injuries. I wasn't about to do that. I examined her foot instead and found a thumb-length cut on the sole, probably from something sharp. It wasn't deep and had mostly stopped bleeding, but needed proper care. I had Bai Shui bring water and mixed in some of our freshly extracted salt to make a simple antiseptic solution. I warned Baihu it would sting, then poured it over the wound to clean out dirt and dried blood. After that, I went into the forest and found plant and herb, a common plant with anti-inflammatory and blood-stopping properties that I'd spotted earlier while mushroom hunting. I crushed it up and applied it to the cut, then wrapped her foot with some of the bulrush grass as a makeshift bandage. I told her to rest and not move around until it healed. Right then, the system triggered a new quest: make grass sandals to protect the hunting team's feet. The reward was 50 reputation per pair, plus a bonus 300 reputation and an initial metal smelting guide, once all 6 team members had shoes. That last reward was huge. It meant I could start working with metal, upgrading the tribe from the Stone Age to bronze or iron tools. Sharper arrowheads, better spear tips, everything would improve. Making sandals would be easy with the weaving skill I'd just learned and the bulrush we'd been collecting. I just needed one more day of drying the grass. That night, Baihu thought she'd get a break from bedwarming duties because of her injury. I told her she didn't need to move. I'd handle everything. Even Wankai the wolf cub got annoyed by the noise and wandered out of the house. That night, while Baihu and I were busy in the house, Wankai was sleeping outside. A shadowy figure snuck into the cave where we stored food. It devoured raw meat, tried some corn and loved it, then bit into a chili pepper and nearly died from the spiciness. After grabbing armfuls of meat and corn, the thief tried to slip away. This time Wankai caught on. He spotted the figure leaving the cave carrying our food and charged at it, howling. The intruder panicked and dropped some meat, but didn't dare pick it up with Wankai baring his teeth. Despite being small, that little wolf cub blocked every escape route, chasing the thief back and forth until it was practically crying. Wankai's constant howling woke me up. Baihu, still red-faced and breathless from our activities, suggested a wild animal might have gotten into camp. I grabbed my bow and went outside. Inu rushed over and told me someone from another tribe had broken in to steal our food. That shocked me. I didn't even know other tribes existed nearby, and they had the nerve to steal from us. Bai Shui whispered something strange to me. The thief had no legs. Instead, she had a long, thick tail. Inu confirmed it. Normal upper body, but no legs at all. I immediately thought of one thing: a snake person. When I pushed through the circle of girls surrounding the thief, I saw I was right. Huddled in the corner, trembling with fear, was a snake woman. She had a beautiful face with sharp features, narrow purple slit pupil eyes like a serpent's, and long silver white hair. From the waist up, she looked like any of my girls, but below that she had a long silver white scaled tail instead of legs. Her name, I'd later learn, was Su Su. I was genuinely surprised. This world had snake women on top of beast-eared girls. Despite being covered in dirt and leaves, this snake girl was stunningly beautiful, with an exotic, almost dangerous allure. Inu asked how we should deal with her. I told everyone to hold on while I questioned her first. I praised Wankai for catching the thief. Without his barking, she would have gotten away clean. The snake girl whimpered that she wasn't a bad person, but I cut her off. She'd stolen our food, so she'd face consequences. I counted what she was carrying: several chunks of meat and some corn. She panicked and dumped everything on the ground, begging me not to miscount. With her arms empty, her figure was fully visible, and I have to say, it was impressive. She noticed me staring and blushed. I played it cool and pointed at her chest area, where the fur covering looked suspiciously bulgy. I demanded to know if she'd hidden more stolen goods under there. She swore she hadn't, but I told her she could either strip the hide off in front of everyone or let me personally inspect. She chose the private inspection, turning her head away and pulling the hide open. I took a thorough look and confirmed there was nothing hidden, just her. Then I got serious and asked who she was. Her name was Su Su, from the Snake People tribe. None of my girls had ever heard of that tribe. I asked her the obvious question: if she had her own tribe, why was she sneaking around stealing from us? Su Su broke down crying and told me her tribe had been destroyed. Another tribe attacked the Snake People, and she barely escaped in the chaos. She'd been wandering the forest for 10 days, sometimes finding berries, but mostly going hungry. Tonight she was so starved she resorted to stealing from us. This hit me hard. It confirmed something I'd been worried about since arriving. Tribes in this world attack and destroy each other. I'd asked my girls about other tribes before, but none of them had ever encountered one, so I'd gradually let my guard down. Susu's story changed that. I asked how she found our tribe. She said she'd spotted our hunting team in the forest today and followed them back. That was a relief. It meant our location hadn't been discovered by anyone else. As long as I kept Susu under control, we were still hidden. I pressed her about who attacked her tribe. She didn't know the name, but described the attackers as huge, strong people with black horns on their heads, like our cowhorn girls' horns, but much bigger. That sounded like minotaurs to me. In a world with snake women and beast-eared girls, bull-headed warriors weren't a stretch. I asked how far away her tribe was. She didn't know exactly since she'd been lost and wandering, but she counted 10 days of travel through the forest. That was reassuring. It meant the Minotaur tribe was far from us, and they probably wouldn't stumble across our location anytime soon. Still, this was a wake-up call. I needed to be more careful about the hunting team being followed, and more importantly, I needed to complete the grass sandal quest fast to get that metal smelting guide. If our tribe ever faced an attack, Stone Age weapons wouldn't be enough. Metal tools and weapons could make the difference between survival and destruction. While I stood there thinking, Susu nervously asked what her punishment would be. Bai Shui tugged my sleeve and begged me to let her stay, saying the poor girl would die alone in the forest. I pulled Inu aside for her opinion. She said calmly that we shouldn't let Susu leave, not out of kindness, but because she now knew our location. If she got captured by another tribe, that information could put us in danger. I was impressed by Inu's sharp thinking. She was right. I turned to Susu and gave her two options: join our tribe, or, before I could finish the second choice, she jumped in and chose the first one. Smart girl. She understood the alternative wouldn't be pleasant. I told her she was welcome, but as punishment for stealing, she'd have to do extra work for a while. She agreed eagerly. Bai Shui cheered that we had a new member. The other girls buzzed with curiosity about this strange snake woman from a faraway tribe. Then Susu hesitantly asked me one more thing. She had a younger sister hiding in the forest. She'd kept it secret because she wasn't sure yet whether we were safe people. She'd stolen extra food to bring to her sister. Now that she knew we weren't going to hurt her, she wanted her sister to join too. I found that touching, actually. Two sisters surviving together in the wilderness. And the thought of a sister pair joining the tribe wasn't bad either. I asked where her sister was. Susu said she could lead us there right now. I called the hunting team to grab their weapons and come along, told Inu to watch over the camp, and followed Susu into the forest. The forest at night was dangerous, but we had no choice. We needed to find Susu's sister. Luckily, the moon was bright enough that we didn't need torches. Carrying fire in a dark forest is risky because it can attract large predators. Only a large group with many torches could scare beasts away, and we were too few for that. Susu said she'd hidden her sister in a big tree near the river to keep her safe from animals. Snake people were natural climbers, so that made sense. I told everyone to move fast. The longer we stayed out here, the more danger we were in. About 10 minutes later, we reached the river. Susu asked to go ahead alone so she wouldn't scare her sister. I agreed. She slithered to a large tree and made hissing sounds. The leaves rustled, and a small face peeked out. Then a little snake girl climbed down excitedly. Her name was Ching Ching. She had green hair, blue eyes, a round baby face, and a leaf bough in her hair. She was clearly young and not nearly as developed as her older sister. She was shy around us and hid behind Susu, peeking out with curious eyes. I told Susu not to worry. Timidity was normal at first, and with time she'd come around. I was about to lead everyone back to camp when Ching Ching quietly mentioned she'd seen a wild beast at the river earlier. A big one. It disappeared when we arrived. That set off alarms in my head. An animal that retreats and hides when it spots people isn't running away, it's watching. I told everyone to move immediately. We'd barely started walking when a deep, powerful roar echoed through the forest. The sound was so heavy it froze everyone's legs in place. I recognized that kind of roar. My face went pale as I grabbed my bow. It might be a tiger. The girls tensed up, ready for a fight. A dark shape flashed through the trees ahead of us. Running wasn't an option. We'd either get ambushed or lead the beast straight to camp. I shouted at everyone to climb the nearest trees immediately. Susu grabbed Ching Ching and scaled a trunk in seconds. Snake people were born climbers. The hunting team girls had learned to climb during training, so they got up fast too. I followed right after. From the branches, I scanned the forest floor but couldn't see anything in the darkness. The beast was hiding somewhere clever. Then I remembered my detection ability. I activated it and swept my field of vision. Information tags popped up everywhere. Oak, fern, grass, until one tag made my blood run cold. Saber-toothed tiger. Elderly. An extinct apex predator from my world, still very much alive here. The good news was that it was old. Aging saber-tooths have poor stamina, which explained why it was hunting at night using ambush tactics instead of chasing prey in daylight. An old one was far more manageable than one in its prime. I drew my bow, aimed at the bush where the detection showed the tiger hiding, and fired. A pained roar confirmed the hit, right in its rear end. The tiger burst out of the bushes, massive but visibly thin, its long fangs gleaming in the moonlight with an arrow sticking out of its backside. I yelled at the girls to shoot. Several arrows flew down from the trees, and a couple found their mark. The tiger snarled and vanished back into the shadows. But it couldn't hide from my detection. I found it again and put another arrow into its belly. The girls heard it roar and fired at the sound, but the darkness made them miss. I told them to save their last arrows. Each girl only had 3, and they couldn't climb down to retrieve the ones on the ground. I regretted not buying extra arrows from the system shop beforehand. With enough ammunition, we could have turned this thing into a pincushion. I scanned the area ahead but couldn't find the tiger. For a moment, I thought it had given up and left. But that could easily be a trick, waiting for us to come down. I turned around and checked behind me. Sure enough, the detection system found it crouching silently in a dense bush at my back, not making a single sound despite its arrow wounds. Incredibly cunning for an old beast. I bought 10 arrows from the system shop for 100 reputation and fired at it with full force. The arrow hit its backside again, and the tiger completely lost it. It charged out from hiding and slammed into my tree, raking its claws down the trunk so hard it peeled off a chunk of bark and shook the entire tree. Even in old age, this thing was terrifyingly powerful. The girls on other trees tried to help, but couldn't get a clear shot. The tiger was pressed against my tree, shielded from their angles. They were panicking, some nearly crying. I had to handle this myself. With the tiger right below me, I aimed straight down at its eye. At this range, I couldn't miss. The arrow punched into its right eye, and blood sprayed everywhere. The tiger went berserk, smashing the tree even harder, making it shake so violently I could barely keep my balance. I tried to hit the other eye, but the swaying threw off my aim. The arrow just grazed its skull, which was too thick to penetrate. I switched targets to its belly, a much softer area. After several shots, one arrow slid in at a sharp angle and hit something vital inside. The tiger collapsed, convulsing on the ground. Then the tough old beast bit the arrow shaft and yanked it out of its own stomach. Blood poured from the hole onto the ground. The saber-tooth struggled back to its feet and glared at me with pure hatred. I kept firing arrows, but the clever beast started dodging while still circling my tree, refusing to leave but no longer standing still. It would attack the trunk between dodges, a smarter strategy than before. The tree was starting to give. Then I saw a torchlight flickering through the dark forest and heard footsteps rushing toward us. It was Inu and the rest of the tribe. The girls on the trees started screaming for help. Baihu had come too, limping on her injured foot. She took charge instantly, told everyone to raise their torches high and hold their spears at an angle, then led the group slowly toward the tiger in a tight formation. The saber-tooth growled but backed away from the wall of fire and pointed weapons. It glanced up at me one last time, then turned and disappeared into the darkness. It was smart enough to know that staying meant death. Baihu asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine, then confirmed with my detection ability that the tiger had truly left before climbing down. Inu explained they'd heard the roaring and got worried when we didn't come back, so she and Baihu organized a rescue party with torches and spears. The torch and spear formation was Baihu's idea, something I taught her during our nighttime sessions. Su apologized, saying this whole mess was her fault for leading us into the forest at night. I told her to drop it. She was part of the tribe now, and the best way to make up for it was to work hard. She and Ching both promised eagerly. I called for everyone to head back before we attracted more predators. When I saw Baihu limping along, I told her to get on my back. She tried to refuse, saying it wasn't appropriate for a chief. So I just picked her up in my arms instead and told her this was a special reward she wasn't allowed to turn down. She gave in, rested her head against my chest, and whispered she'd work even harder at warming my bed. The other girls watched with obvious envy. Back at camp, I had everyone pile the torches into a bonfire and made an important announcement. Starting tomorrow, we'd take turns standing guard at night. Tonight's events proved how vulnerable we were. Su had snuck in and stolen food without anyone noticing, and a saber-toothed tiger had appeared dangerously close to our territory. Either threat could have been deadly if we weren't lucky. Su backed me up, saying her own Snake People tribe was destroyed precisely because they had no night watch. That convinced everyone. Inu asked how we'd organize it, and I told her I'd explain the details tomorrow. Before dismissing the hunting team, I told them to rest well because at dawn we'd go back into the forest to finish off that saber-tooth. They were surprised. Why chase something we'd already driven away? I explained that we'd wounded it badly and blinded one eye. It would remember us. If we left it alive, it would come back for revenge once it healed. Better to end it now while it was weak. With no spare house for the Snake Sisters, I told Su and Ching to sleep in my cabin for the night. Su hesitated, but when I pointed at the dark cave as the alternative, she chose the house. Baihu refused to leave my side, insisting on keeping watch with me even with her injured foot. I agreed. She could nap during the day tomorrow, and I'd appreciate the company. Inside the cabin, Ching asked her sister what bed warming meant. Su said she didn't know. Ching said she wanted to warm my bed someday to repay my kindness, and suggested her sister should too. That way they could both thank me together. Su's expression turned strange, but she admitted she probably wouldn't refuse. Baihu and I sat by the fire keeping watch. She suggested I get some sleep, but I pointed out there was no bed. She thought for a moment, then shyly placed her legs together and offered her lap as a pillow. I wasn't about to refuse that. I laid my head down and it was soft, warm, and smooth, better than any bed. She blushed and asked if it was comfortable. I said it was perfect, except for one problem. I couldn't see her face from this angle. She tilted her head innocently, not understanding why that mattered. At dawn, I gathered the hunting team. Before leaving, I gave the rest of the tribe 2 tasks: dry the bulrush grass we'd collected and build a new house for the Snake Sisters. Inu assured me she'd handle everything. I bought extra arrows from the shop and distributed them to the team. Then we headed into the forest. We found the spot where we'd fought the saber-tooth and picked up its blood trail. After following it for over an hour, the tracks led to an abandoned cave. One of the girls asked if we should lure it out. I said no. Charging into a dark cave against a saber-tooth would be suicidal. Instead, we'd build a pit trap nearby first. I bought 5 shovels from the system and handed them to the team. A cowhorn girl named Hua Yi stepped up as acting leader since Baihu wasn't with us. She was the second best hunter on the team and took the role seriously. I told her to keep the digging quiet so we wouldn't alert the tiger. While they dug, I went to find materials for the spikes. I couldn't find bamboo nearby, so I used oak branches instead. Hard, dense wood that made excellent spikes. I sharpened one end of each branch with the bone knife and cut them to the right length. But this time I needed more than just a regular pit trap. A saber-toothed tiger has incredibly powerful legs and could potentially leap out of a hole. So I built a trap cover, a sturdy grid of thick wooden rods tied tightly together with vines, sized to fit over the pit. I even added sharp spikes on the underside, so if the tiger tried to push up against it, it would get stabbed. The girls spent about 2 hours digging the pit. Hua Yi, the cowhorn girl acting as temporary captain, asked about the cover since it wasn't part of the standard trap design I taught them. I explained it was a special edition for dealing with extremely dangerous prey that might escape a normal pit. She was excited to learn something new. I noticed her blushing and guessing she might become my next bed warmer. I pretended not to notice. Once the spikes were planted at the bottom and the pit was camouflaged with branches and grass, I told the team to hide nearby with the cover ready. The moment the tiger fell in, they'd slam the lid on top. I approached the cave alone and fired a few arrows inside. A roar shook the air and the saber-tooth charged out. Its right eye still had half an arrow stuck in it, completely destroyed. With only one working eye, it took a moment to spot me. When it did, it recognized me instantly. The hatred was obvious. It bared its fangs and lunged. This thing was unbelievably tough. After taking so many arrows last night, it was still fast and ferocious. It was way quicker than me. I fired an arrow behind me to slow it down, but after a brief pause, it launched itself forward in a single leap of 4 or 5 meters, closing the distance fast. I dove into a roll and landed right next to the pit trap. From a crouch, I aimed at the tiger's remaining eye and fired. But this beast was sharp. It turned its head, dodged the arrow, and caught the shaft in its teeth, snapping it like a twig. It charged and launched itself into the air straight at me. I stayed calm, waited until the last second, then dropped flat and rolled sideways. The tiger sailed over me and landed where I'd just been. Its momentum carried it a few steps forward, right onto the camouflage trap. As its feet hit empty air, I fired one final arrow into its raised backside. The tiger screamed and plunged into the pit. The girls rushed out with the trap cover and slammed it down over the opening, sealing it shut. Down below, the tiger had landed on its side, and the wooden spikes drove deep into its body and between its ribs. Blood poured everywhere. I ordered everyone to fire arrows through the gaps in the cover. This time, they had plenty of ammunition. Dozens of arrows rained down, piercing the tiger from every angle. Its roaring gradually faded to silence, but I wasn't taking chances with this cunning old beast. I put several more arrows into it and blinded its last eye. Only after it stayed completely still did I have the girls remove the cover and haul the body out. The girls gathered around the massive carcass in awe. Its claws were as big as someone's face. Its fangs could be carved into weapons sharper than our bone knives, and its fur would make excellent clothing. When one girl asked if we could eat the meat, I told her probably not. Predator meat tends to be tough, lean, and smells bad, especially from an old animal. But we could feed it to Wonkai, and the bones, teeth, tendons, and hide were all incredibly valuable resources. I told the girls to prepare the body for transport while I went to check the tiger's cave with Hua Yi. Large predators often leave behind useful bone deposits in their dens. Hua Yi and I crept into the saber-tooth's cave. It stank of rot and decay. She asked nervously if there might be more beasts inside. I told her no, apex predators don't share dens. Deep inside, we found exactly what I'd expected: piles of animal bones, some still carrying rotten flesh. The tiger had clearly been eating well for a long time, though the lack of fresh kills explained why it had been hunting near the river last night. It hadn't caught anything recently. Hua Yi looked at me with admiration when I explained all this. I noticed she'd been giving me those starry-eyed looks a lot. I made a mental note to explore that situation more closely sometime. We started picking through the bones for usable pieces. Then Hua Yi shouted that she'd found another opening in the cave wall. Before I could react, she'd already squeezed her upper body through. The view from behind was educational. I allowed myself a long look. Then her voice echoed back excitedly. She said there were beautiful stones inside. But a second later, her tone changed to panic. She was stuck. Her shoulders had wedged into the narrow gap, and she couldn't pull herself back out. I walked up behind her, wrapped my hands around her waist, and told her to squeeze her shoulders together on the count of 3. When I pulled, we both went flying backward. I landed hard on the rocky ground with her sitting on top of me. My backside took the full impact. She jumped up apologizing, but when I looked up at her, I froze. The force of our tumble had knocked the animal hide covering her chest completely off. It had slid down to her waist, leaving everything exposed. I swallowed hard and awkwardly pointed out that her clothes had fallen off. She looked down at herself in total confusion. Hua Yi screamed and spun around, covering her chest with both hands. Her face was completely red. I promised to close my eyes while she fixed her clothes, though I may have peeked through my fingers a little. I noticed that different beast-eared girls had different levels of shyness. Hua Yi was much more modest than Bai Hu, who probably would have asked me to help her put the hide back on. Once she was dressed again, I changed the subject and asked about the stones she'd mentioned finding. She said the cave behind the gap was full of beautiful green stones. I went to take a look and saw small green spheres growing on the cave walls, with some branch-shaped formations on the ground. I couldn't identify them by sight, so I used my detection ability. Malachite, a common copper ore used for decoration and copper smelting. My heart started racing. Copper is the key ingredient for making bronze. Once I completed the grass sandal quest and got the metal smelting guide, I could actually start producing metal tools and weapons. This discovery would push our tribe into the Metal Age far sooner than I'd imagined. But I couldn't mine it right now. We didn't have enough people or proper tools with us. The cave was far from camp, and we still had the tiger's body to haul back. More importantly, I needed to keep this location secret. If another tribe stumbled across this cave and found the copper ore, we'd lose everything. I told Hua Yi to block the opening with the animal bones and pile stones over the gaps so nobody would notice the hidden cave. She was disappointed about leaving the pretty stones behind, but when I told her how important they were, she got serious and did a thorough job disguising the entrance. We grabbed some usable bones and headed out. The other girls had finished tying up the saber-tooth's body. Hua Yi nearly blurted out our discovery, but I shushed her. That information would wait until we were safely back at camp. Back at camp, the girls crowded around the saber-tooth's body in amazement. Bai Shui compared her tiny hand to its massive paw, and her jaw dropped. Bai Hu asked if anyone was hurt, clearly more worried about our safety than the kill. I teased her by saying she of all people should know how capable I was. She blushed and looked away. Hua Yi couldn't contain herself and started telling everyone about the amazing green stones we'd found. But when she said it was just pretty rocks, the girls instantly lost interest. Bai Shui said she'd picked up nice stones by the river before. Nothing special. Hua Yi got flustered trying to explain why these were different. I stepped in and told everyone these weren't ordinary stones. They were metal ore. The girls had no idea what that meant, so I explained it simply. Inside these special rocks was a hidden treasure called metal. If extracted properly, metal could be used to make tools far superior to anything we currently had, sharper than bone knives, strong enough to cut through vines and bamboo in a single stroke. That got their attention. Inyu looked me over and asked where the ore was. Bai Shui pointed at a bulge in my lower clothing and declared I must have hidden it there. Bai Hu immediately shot that down. She knew perfectly well what was actually there. I coughed and explained that the ore was still in the cave and needed to be properly mined, which required preparation. Inyu reported that the bulrush had been drying in the sun as instructed, and the new house for the Snake Sisters was partially built. I told her not to rush the house, and to go process the saber-tooth first. Then I went to check the bulrush myself. After 2 days of drying, it felt ready for weaving. I called Bai Hu over. It was time to start making sandals. I called Bai Hu over to make her a pair of grass sandals. She'd never heard of shoes. Nobody in the tribe wore them. I explained they protect her feet from getting cut again, like how clothes protected her body. I had her sit on a rock so I could measure her foot. It was small, maybe a size 36 in modern terms. I held her foot with one hand and measured with a strip of bulrush in the other. With her leg raised, her grass skirt slid up quite a bit. She noticed me looking and deliberately lifted her leg higher to give me a better view. I coughed and told her to save that for nighttime. I took the dried bulrush and twisted it into rope first. It makes stronger, more durable sandals than weaving with raw grass. I worked slowly so Bai Hu could watch and learn. Within minutes, I'd finished one sandal, complete with a decorative butterfly knot at the opening. She loved it and asked to try it on. I offered to put it on her foot myself as a reward for her bed-warming services. She blushed, but let me. I slipped it on and tied the grass rope laces. She stood up and wobbled at first. Her first time wearing any footwear, but after a few steps, she lit up. It was soft, comfortable, and would keep her feet safe during hunts. I started making the second sandal while she watched closely, trying to learn the technique. But after seeing the whole process, she admitted it still seemed too difficult. I told her not to worry and offered to teach her at night. She immediately perked up and said that was perfect. I could teach her weaving while she handled the bed-warming part by herself. That caught me off guard. Bai Hu promised she'd handle the bed-warming all by herself while I taught her weaving. The idea of a fully self-operating beast-eared girl was appealing. Hua Yi came by and noticed Bai Hu's new sandals. Her eyes lit up and she asked for a pair too. I told her to gather the whole hunting team. I planned to make sandals for everyone. She ran off and brought them all back quickly. I measured each girl's feet and started weaving. When I finished the second pair and called Hua Yi over to try them on, she hesitated about letting me put them on her feet. I told her I'd done the same for Bai Hu, so it was fine. Her feet were bigger than Bai Hu's, but softer and whiter. I may have squeezed them a couple extra times before getting the sandals on. She walked around testing them, loved the comfort, and then quietly offered to warm my bed like Bai Hu does. I told her we'd discuss that later. I couldn't rush into having multiple bed warmers without it looking bad. Bai Hu watched the whole exchange with suspicious eyes. She seemed to sense something had happened between Hua Yi and me during the cave expedition. She silently vowed to interrogate me about it tonight. I kept working through the evening until every hunting team member had a pair of sandals. The girls were thrilled, walking around camp enjoying the new feeling on their feet. Then the system chimed. Quest complete. I received 600 reputation and the metal smelting guide. Finally, I opened my inventory and used it immediately. A massive flood of knowledge poured into my brain. Everything about metal smelting, from ore processing to forging techniques. In under 3 minutes, I had it all. The tribe was ready to enter the Metal Age. As the smelting knowledge settled in my brain, I realized something important. Making bronze isn't just about copper. You need tin too. The malachite I found in the saber-tooth's cave could give me copper, but without tin ore, I couldn't produce actual bronze tools or weapons. I thought about using the exploration divination to find tin, but then the system surprised me with a brand new feature, or divination. Excited, I tried to use it right away. But the system told me my tribe was still classified as a Stone Age civilization, so I could only locate stone resources for now. To unlock metal or divination, I needed the tribe to actually possess a metal object first. That meant I had to mine the malachite, smelt it into pure copper, and craft something out of it. Even a simple cup or decoration would count. Pure copper is soft and not great for weapons, but I didn't need weapons yet. I just needed one copper item to upgrade the tribe's civilization level and unlock the ability to find tin. So my plan was clear. Mine the malachite, smelt copper, make a copper item, then use or divination to locate tin. But first I needed a way to transport heavy ore from that distant cave back to camp. Tomorrow I'd build a simple wooden cart. Inu came to report that the saber-tooth's meat was terrible, smelly and tough, impossible to make edible no matter how much they washed it. I told her I'd already expected that, and to save the meat for Wankai instead. She was impressed I'd planned ahead. I also asked about the saber-tooth's bones. They'd make excellent bone nails for building the cart, much harder and sharper than wooden nails. And those 2 massive fangs? I planned to carve them into a pair of curved knives. One for me, one for Baihu. A gift like that would surely make her so grateful she'd let me pick any position I wanted at bedtime. Inu noticed the hunting team's sandals and looked envious. I promised her everyone in the tribe would get a pair eventually. Then I asked her to show me where the animal bones were stored. I found the saber-tooth's 2 massive fangs and pulled them out. They were the perfect length and weight for making curved knives. Inu offered to have the girls do the polishing, but I refused. These were going to be a surprise gift for Baihu, and I wanted to craft them personally. I sent Baihu and the hunting team to grind thinner bones into bone nails, which I need tomorrow for building a transport cart. They got to work quickly since bone grinding was something every girl in the tribe knew how to do. I sat down with a rough stone and started shaping the fangs. They were already naturally curved like crescent moons, so I just needed to thin one edge into a blade. But the material was incredibly hard, and progress was slow. By dinner time, I wasn't even close to finished. I estimated 2 or 3 more days of work. The bone nails were coming along faster, though the team hadn't made enough for the cart yet either. They'd need to continue tomorrow. After dinner, I gathered everyone around the fire and officially set up the night watch system. 2 people per shift, paired with their housemates. Each shift would last until one pile of firewood burned out, roughly 2 hours. Shifts would be assigned by drawing lots to keep it fair. That meant 4 shifts per night, cycling through all the pairs every 2 days. Baihu asked who'd go first tonight. I said we'd draw for it. She silently prayed it wouldn't be her. She had plans to learn weaving from me while handling the bed warming on her own tonight. I carved numbers into 8 sticks and held them up for everyone to draw lots. Baishue begged to go first, thinking it would give her an advantage. She drew and got stick number 1. First watch. She whimpered and apologized to Inu, her housemate. Inu took it calmly, pointing out that going first meant they could sleep straight through after their shift without being woken up. Then little Ching Ching drew second. She and Baishue stared at each other in disbelief. 2 unlucky little girls stuck with the earliest shifts. They hugged and cried together. Watching those 2 lowly snake girl and fox girl clinging to each other, I had some thoughts I probably shouldn't have. Baihu and I drew 5th, meaning tomorrow night would be our first shift, and tonight we were completely free. Perfect. I split the firewood into 4 equal piles, 1 per shift. Each pair had to keep the fire burning steadily by adding wood gradually. I warned everyone not to dump all the wood in at once to get their shift over faster. Anyone caught cheating would face stick education. Nobody wanted to test that threat. Then Su asked where she and Ching Ching would sleep tonight, since their house wasn't finished yet, and Baihu and I would be using our cabin. She seemed genuinely worried about sharing a bed with me. Her mother had told her that sleeping with a man leads to babies. In her snake people tribe, That was simply how reproduction worked, and she'd been expected to take on that duty herself before her tribe was destroyed. I figured out a sleeping arrangement for the Snake Sisters, since one pair of girls would always be on guard duty. Their empty cabin could be used by Su Su and Ching Ching. Each time the watch shifted, the sisters would move to the next vacated room. Nobody had any complaints, so that was settled. Then I got curious and asked Su Su why she and Ching Ching always had snake tails instead of legs. In my mind, snake people should be able to take human form. Su Su got shy and couldn't answer, so Ching Ching explained innocently. Snake people could only transform their lower half into legs during mating. If I wanted to see her sister's legs, I'd have to reproduce with her. That was an unexpected requirement, but not exactly a deal breaker. The beast-eared girls overheard the word reproduction and got excited. They had no idea what it meant since there had never been a male in their tribe before. Ching Ching told them it was how you make babies. The girls immediately turned to me, asking if I knew how reproduction worked. I told them it was complicated, but promised I'd personally teach each and every one of them when the time came. They cheered about wanting to have lots of baby beast-eared girls with me. Baihu pulled me aside and whispered, asking if I actually knew what reproduction was. I told her quietly that it was exactly what we'd been doing in bed every night. Her eyes went wide. She'd had no idea our nightly activities were the same thing as making babies. Later that night, Bai Shui and Yin were on first watch. Bai Shui kept hearing strange noises from my cabin and asked Yin what Baihu and I were doing in there. She suggested sneaking over to peek. Yin's face turned red. She tore a leaf in half, rolled it up, and stuffed the pieces into Bai Shui's fluffy ears, telling her to focus on guard duty and pretend she heard nothing. The next morning, everyone got to work. Yin's team continued building the Snake Sisters' house. Baihu's team kept grinding bones into nails for the cart, and I took Su Su and Ching Ching into the forest to help me chop wood. They didn't know how to do anything the other girls could do. No bone grinding, no construction. So tree cutting was their only useful skill. On the way there, Su Su nervously asked if I'd brought them to the forest to reproduce with them. I told her she was overthinking it. I just needed wood for building a cart. She felt embarrassed for assuming the worst and apologized. I pretended to be hurt by her accusation. She panicked and offered to show me her human form as an apology, since I'd mentioned wanting to see it the night before. In her tribe, there was an unwritten rule. If a male saw a snake woman in her mating form, she was expected to reproduce with him. But she said she was fine with that if it was me. She wanted to repay our tribe's kindness. I told her it was completely her choice, and she agreed. Her snake tail coiled up, glowed white, and transformed into a pair of long, slender human legs. She was stunning. There was just one problem I hadn't anticipated. Her grass skirt only worked with a tail. In human form, she had nothing covering her lower half. I quickly turned away and told her I'd seen enough. She could change back. She was confused and asked why I didn't want to proceed with the mating. I told her next time. This wasn't the right place, and her little sister was standing right there watching. Then Ching Ching innocently asked if I wanted to see her transform too. I looked at her tiny frame and waved her off, saying there wasn't much to see. She pouted, not understanding why I was interested in her sister, but not her. She'd figure that out when she was older. I found a thick oak tree perfect for making cartwheels, and the three of us started chopping. It took over 2 hours of work before it finally crashed down. I marked a spot about 10 centimeters from one end. That width would be ideal for a wheel, heavy enough to bear weight, but light enough to keep the cart moving efficiently. I left the sisters to cut along my mark while I headed back to check on things at camp. Baihu had finished grinding all the bones into nails, several dozen of them, neatly stacked. That was plenty. I took the hunting team to the bamboo grove next. Bamboo would work much better than oak for the cart's body and cargo bed. Lighter, easier to cut and shape, but still strong. The girls were experts at cutting bamboo by now, so I left them to it. I grabbed some water and went back to the sisters in the forest. They were still working hard, not slacking off at all despite me being gone. Ching Ching was drenched in sweat and struggling, so I took over for her and gave her water. Su Su was sweating too. Her chest covering was completely soaked through. She asked if she could take off her hide top, since it was sticking to her uncomfortably. I told her to go ahead and offered to weave her something lighter from leaves. After I'd already seen her in human form that morning, she didn't feel shy around me anymore. She stripped it off and kept working right next to me, completely uncovered. The sight was incredibly distracting. I made an excuse about going to find materials for weaving her new clothes and quickly left. If Ching Ching hadn't been sitting right there watching, I'm not sure I could have controlled myself. I wove some broad leaves and grass into a chest covering for Su Su, sized generously based on what I'd seen earlier. She loved it and put it on right away. It fit perfectly. Ching Ching asked for one too, but I told her there wasn't much point since she was completely flat. She pouted and swore she'd grow as big as her sister someday. By midday, the three of us had cut 4 wool sections from the oak trunk. I showed Su Su how a round shape rolls easily by standing one up and giving it a push. She was impressed. I told her my real talents would be on display when we eventually got around to reproducing. She had no response to that. Back at camp, all the materials were ready. I started with the wheels, carving a 5-centimeter hole in the center of each one for the axle. After demonstrating the technique, I let the girls take over the slow, careful work of chiseling through all 4 wheels. Meanwhile, I built the cargo bed from bamboo, tightly arranged bamboo poles forming a rectangular box, secured at every joint with bone nails. I added extra nails at the side connections and wrapped the whole thing with vine for double reinforcement. It needed to hold heavy or without falling apart during transport. When the girls finished the wheel holes, I inspected them. A bit rough, but the right size. They just needed smoothing and lubrication. In the primitive world, animal fat works as a substitute for grease. I asked Inu to bring some of the white fatty substance scraped from the saber-tooth's body. Baihu volunteered instead, saying she knew exactly what fat looked like. She'd seen it and even tasted it before. She came back quickly with a jar full of the stuff. Then she leaned close to my ear and whispered something that left me speechless. She said this fat looked nothing like what came out of my body. I had absolutely no words. I told Baihu that what comes out of my body is definitely not fat. She mumbled that she'd been wondering why the taste was different. I cut her off before she could say anything worse. I took the animal fat and smeared it inside all 4 wheel holes with a stick to reduce friction. Then I found 2 strong bamboo poles for axles, inserted them through the wheels, and secured everything with bone nails so the wheels wouldn't slide around. Next, I had the girls lift the cargo bed onto the axles and tied it all together with nails and vines. The tribe's first wooden cart was complete. I gave it a test push. It rolled forward easily with barely any effort, much smoother than I'd expected. The girls were amazed. They'd never seen anything like it, something so big that moved with just a light push. I let everyone try pushing it around. Even Bai Shui, the smallest and weakest girl in the tribe, could move it effortlessly. Baihu immediately spotted another use for it. She pointed out that the hunting team could load killed animals onto the cart instead of having several people carry them back on their shoulders. That would save a lot of energy. I praised her sharp thinking. She blushed and credited my nightly teachings. Then Inu raised a practical concern. The cart was light empty, but could it really handle a full load of heavy or transport it over a long distance? She had a good point. We needed to test it under weight. Since we didn't have any or yet, I figured the next best thing would be to have a couple of girls sit inside the cart and then try pushing it. I needed someone heavy to test the cart's load capacity. I scanned the girls, and my eyes landed on Hua Yi. She had the most impressive figure in the entire tribe. I told her to climb in. She blushed and insisted she wasn't fat. I told her weight didn't matter, size did. She caught me looking at her chest and whined that I was staring at that place again. The word, again, made Baihu shoot me a suspicious look. Hua Yi got in, and Baihu tried pushing. She managed it with a bit of effort. One person pulling the cart with another person inside was no problem. The girls were impressed, but I wanted to push it further. I called Su Su over to get in too. She was embarrassed, thinking I'd picked her because of her weight. She looked down, realized she couldn't see her own feet past her chest, and understood why I'd chosen her. She climbed in with a red face. The cart creaked under the combined weight. Su Su panicked and asked if she was breaking it. I told her it was fine, would naturally make sounds under load. Baihu tried pushing again. This time the wheels dug into the soft ground, and she could barely move it. After a second attempt, it inched forward slightly then stopped. She shook her head. Too heavy for one person. That was expected. 2 people weighing over 100 kilograms plus the cart itself on soft forest ground was too much for a solo pusher. But I planned for this. I'd built 2 holes in the front of the cargo bed for threading ropes. With 2 people pulling from the front and 2 pushing from behind, we could move 400 or 500 pounds or easily. I just needed to weave some strong ropes from grass, which I could do with my weaving skill. Baihu asked excitedly if we could start mining tomorrow. I told her yes. Once I braided the ropes in the morning, we'd head out to collect our first load of copper ore. After all this time in the primitive world, we were finally about to enter the Metal Age. The girls cheered when they heard we'd be mining tomorrow. Inu asked if everyone needed to go. I said no, 10 people would be enough. We needed some to stay behind and guard the camp, and the mine entrance was too small for a big group anyway. The hunting team of 6 would come for sure, so I just needed 3 more volunteers. Everyone wanted to go. Then Susu stepped forward and asked to join. She wanted to prove she could contribute to the tribe. I agreed. She had decent stamina from all that tree chopping, and I could tell she needed to feel like she belonged here. She was so grateful she blurted out that she was available for reproducing anytime I wanted. I told her to keep that kind of talk quiet. Baihu overheard and immediately got jealous. To her, reproducing meant bed warming, and she wasn't about to let Susu steal her position. Ching Ching begged to come too, but I turned her down. She was too small for heavy labor. She tried the same tactic as her sister, offering to reproduce with me anytime. I told her mining and reproducing were separate matters. Mining was off the table, but the other offer. I'd keep that in mind for later. Bai Shui also asked to go, and I pointed at Ching Ching and told her to sit with the other rejected one. She whimpered. In the end, I picked 2 more girls to round out the team of 10. One was a sheep-horned girl named Shui Rong, who had the palest skin in the tribe. The other was a horse-tailed girl named Wu, who wore her hair in 2 braids and had a sweet face. That night during our watch shift, Baihu confronted me about Susu. She said Susu's bold talk about reproducing and the way she looked at me were dead giveaways. Her bed-warming instincts told her Susu wanted to warm my bed. She was clearly jealous. I asked what she'd do if Susu really did join. Without hesitation, she said she'd insist on going first. I suggested both of them could do it together. She was stunned. She couldn't imagine how that would work. I told her I'd personally demonstrate with both of them sometime soon. The next morning, I braided 2 strong ropes from vine fiber and tied them to the front of the cart so girls could pull from the front while others pushed from behind. I told Baihu to have the hunting team bring their bows. The mine was deep in the forest, and we might run into wild animals. After loading tools into the cart, pickaxes, hammers, chisels, and 2 bamboo baskets for carrying or out of the narrow cave, we set off. 2 hours later, we arrived at the saber-tooth's old cave. But something was wrong. The stones and grass I'd used to disguise the entrance had been scattered. On the ground near the opening were wide, wavy drag marks, the kind a snake makes when it moves. I asked Susu to check them. She confirmed they weren't from snake people. They were too wide and deep. That left only one possibility. A giant snake had moved into the cave. I told everyone to get ready for trouble and fired an arrow into the cave to flush out whatever was inside. A low hissing sound echoed from the darkness, followed by scraping. Then an enormous head emerged, covered in patterned scales, bigger than a basketball, with narrow eyes and a flickering red tongue. Its body was thicker than a tree trunk. Just lifting its head up, it towered over 2 meters tall, blocking the sunlight like a living wall. The giant snake that emerged from the cave was absolutely terrifying. Its body was wider than an adult person, and based on what I could see, I estimated it was at least 15 or 16 meters long, most of it still hidden inside the cave. Just raising its head, it towered over 2 meters high. This was far worse than the saber-toothed tiger. Pit traps were useless. Nothing we could dig would hold something this massive. Climbing trees wouldn't help either, since most forest snakes can climb, and even if this one couldn't, it could reach us just by lifting its head. I had no immediate plan, and the girls could see it on my face. They started panicking. Then Susu stepped forward and said she might have a solution. She explained that snake people have a special ability to communicate with other snake species. She thought she could try talking to the giant snake and convince it to leave the cave. I was shocked. All this time she'd just been chopping trees, and she had this incredible power? It was basically a primitive form of beast communication. She admitted she'd only learned the basics and had never tried it on anything this big. She wasn't confident it would work. When I asked if it was dangerous, she said no, but she couldn't guarantee success. I thought it over carefully. The ore was important, but not worth losing anyone over. I grabbed her shoulders, looked her in the eyes, and told her to try, but her safety came first. If anything went wrong, she had to pull back immediately. The ore could wait. She couldn't be replaced. She nodded, visibly moved. I ordered the hunting team to ready their bows and aim at the snake's head, prepared to fire the instant anything went wrong. Under everyone's nervous watch, Susu slithered toward the giant snake. The moment it saw her, its pupils narrowed to slits and it rushed out of the cave, coiling its massive body around her in a circle. The girls nearly fired their bows, but I stopped them. The snake hadn't actually attacked Susu, and shooting now would only provoke it with her trapped inside. Once the snake fully emerged from the cave, I realized I'd badly underestimated its size. It wasn't 15 meters, it was over 20. This thing was beyond anything we could fight. I stopped hoping Susu could drive it away and just prayed she'd come back alive. Inside the coil, Susu was terrified at first and collapsed to the ground. But she gathered her courage, stood up, and started making hissing sounds to communicate with the snake. The giant serpent paused, clearly confused that this tiny creature could speak its language. After a moment, it began responding. Susu had made contact. After a long, tense wait, the snake slowly uncoiled and released Susu. It even nudged her forward with its head, pushing her back toward us before retreating into the cave. When Susu reached us, I asked if the snake would leave. She said it was willing to go, but it needed our help first. Something large was stuck in its throat, probably the horns of a big animal it had swallowed. It was in pain and couldn't eat properly. That explained why it had taken shelter in the cave during the hot midday sun. If we could remove whatever was lodged in its throat, the snake would leave peacefully. Given the snake's enormous size, whatever it had swallowed must have been a very large animal. Susu asked if we could actually help the snake. I told her I needed to see the problem first. I went with her while everyone else stayed back with bows ready. Baihu wanted to come, but I told her the hunting team needed her in command. Susu said I was being too cautious. In her experience, snakes weren't as scheming as I feared. I told her extra caution never hurts. When we approached, the giant snake lowered its head and sniffed me with its flickering tongue. I stayed perfectly still, one hand gripping the knife at my waist. It didn't attack, just checking my scent. Susu communicated with it, and the snake lay flat and opened its enormous mouth. The smell was awful. I peered inside and spotted the problem. A massive set of deer antlers jammed deep in its throat. The antlers had torn the lining of its throat, and there was blood. The deer it swallowed must have been even bigger than the giant one our hunting team had caught. I couldn't just yank the antlers out. They were wedged too tightly, and pulling would cause more damage. I needed to saw through them first. I tied a bone knife to a long stick since my arm couldn't reach that deep. Susu asked the snake for permission, and it nodded. Actually nodded, like it understood. I slid the tool into its mouth and started cutting with a careful rhythm. Not too deep, not too fast. The snake's pupils kept contracting with each movement, but it held still. I'd also had Susu prop the snake's jaws open with thick wooden posts so it wouldn't accidentally close its mouth on me. After about an hour of painstaking work, I heard a crack. The antler snapped in two. I pulled out the broken piece, and the snake spat out the other half on its own. The snake reared up excitedly, hissing with what sounded like relief. I instinctively pulled Susu behind me, thinking it might turn on us. But it just circled us a few times, its way of saying thank you, then slithered off into the forest and disappeared. The cave was ours. Once the giant snake disappeared into the forest, I let out a huge sigh of relief. The cave was finally ours. I thanked Susu sincerely. Without her courage and her ability to communicate with the snake, we'd have gone home empty-handed. I told her she deserved a reward and asked what she wanted. She thought about it, looked at my face, turned red, and quietly asked if reproducing counted. I told her to come to my room tonight, and I'd personally teach her the secrets of reproduction. Baihu and the others ran over once they saw the snake was gone. I gave Susu full credit in front of everyone. The girls showered her with praise, calling her the tribe's hero. Susu was so embarrassed she couldn't even make eye contact. I cut the celebration short and got everyone focused on the actual mission, mining. I explained that 2 people needed to stay outside to guard the cart from wild animals. Nobody wanted to volunteer until Susu stepped up again, saying she'd watch the cart. A horse-tailed girl named Wu offered to stay with her. The rest of us headed into the cave. At the back, the hidden opening was still blocked with bones and stones, exactly as Hua Yi and I had left it. Even the giant snake hadn't noticed it. I had the girls clear the barrier, revealing the narrow gap that had trapped Hua Yi last time. I ordered them to widen the opening with their pickaxes, and they went at it eagerly, hammering away at the rock.